one last time. We are back. Our third and final set of the day about to kick off. Gore, we did 2 EU sets, and now we're over in North America. And over here in NA, it's not like the competition drops off any at all from what we see over in Europe. There are 3 teams tied for first over in EU. Similar levels of competition here in North America.
And that's actually something I thought was interesting. You look at these 2 teams. Look, I'm going to tell you, this is not a matchup that should be number 5 and number 6. Like, that blows my mind.
Yeah, what in the world?
You look at the names on these teams, and this should be a fight for first after what I would have expected. But after the last 2 weeks, it's not as heavy hitting as you would think. The good news is, no matter what, someone is getting their first win, right? So that's a big dub for them, right? No matter what happens, somebody is going to be able to walk a win. But when you look at it, you've got Griff, Dingodile, Leon, Ishtau, Uzi there for Average Joes, all incredibly talented players. But Hoofs, it's Snoopy, Gino, Baskin, Mask, and Meerkat. And I was told by Aggro before we came in here, I think Gino is not going to be playing today. I can't remember right off the top of my head. It was a familiar name, and already I have forgotten who is going to be subbing in there. But either way, maybe that changes things. Maybe that hurts things a little bit for the Herculean side of the map. But at the end of the day, both of these teams need a complete revamp from the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, just the names you say there, I can't quite believe that both of these squads have 0 wins on their side. But one of them will have one by the end of the day here today. I wonder if maybe some of the onus then falls on this Hoofs team. Snoopy, Gino, Baskin, Mast, Meerkat. I mean, these guys have some history together. Yeah. I wonder if they're maybe just as surprised as we are that the success hasn't quite found them yet. Granted, very early on here, Gore. You know, it's not all said and done just yet. You just need to be in the top 2. Plenty of time to catch up. But are you surprised, specifically with this team? Obviously, we're surprised that both of these teams don't have wins, but this team maybe more so.
Yeah, I would argue a little harder that it's just difficult to believe that this is all the way at the bottom. And it was Met Yankee who's going to be coming in, again, somebody filling in for Gino that admittedly has a long history of playing Smite, so I don't think that's going to be a negative effect at all. It's actually going to be pretty prominent. I think that's going to be interesting, but playing with a sub, no matter what, whether it's a veteran that's been around for a while or not, is not necessarily the end-all, be-all, best-case scenario when you're down at the very, very bottom of the standings, right? So now you're in this position where you have to figure out what you need to turn around and who is going to have to kind of pick that up. We've seen Baskin have some really good games, maybe some really not-so-great games, right? A couple of missed abilities in the middle of a team fight, and things will fall apart. The biggest thing to say is I think a lot of their sets, at least this first one that we're watching when they played a couple weeks ago, did go to 3, and so it was highly contested throughout all of it. And the very first one, if I remember correctly, they kind of demolished in here. I mean, you can see them up 4-0. Like, they ran it down, and they ran it down hard and caused a lot of trouble for everyone that they've gone up against. It's just not been collecting itself into the late game. So I want to see more of Masked in that transition, more Baskin, more Snoopy as they go into the late game and what they can do, because I think everywhere else so far has been pretty solid.
Yeah, I agree. I'm interested. She's still the stick.
Win,
I'm gonna have pine cones and sticks in my bed. What you guys can't see. So every night, we're escaping from this game. I'm sorry, but every night she brings a pine cone inside, and I take it from her. I'm sorry, but I have like 9 pine cones sitting on my desk in front of me, and I gave her one a minute ago, and now there's just pine cone, whatever these things are, just laying all over my bed right now. I'll deal with that. In the meantime, very interested to see, though, that this team continue to grow, iron out some of the issues that they've had early on.
I love it.
Gore, on the other side, though, you look at this Average Joe's team, Griff, Dingodile, Leon, Ishtau, Uzi, still very surprising that they haven't quite found the success early on here. How much of that do you think, I'm not laying this at anyone's feet, how much of this team finding their footing do you think lies with Leon and his ability to shot call and get this game back to their winning ways?
I think we got to see some interesting gameplay from Leon last week. Last week, though, was this guy through and through. Like, I think Griff was absolutely just running the show for Average Joes. In moments where they weren't being and are finding success, Griff was the one really just pioneering things for them, it felt like. And it's been this Apollo pick, at least last week, was the talk of the town for us, something that I thought was going to be a little more crucial, a little more impactful. I actually think as much as there's maybe a little bit of wiggle room for Leon to start doing a little more, because let's face it, he's a phenomenal jungler, and trying to put that into support doesn't always translate well. You can't change the game as much as a support player. You can set up everything. You will win the game because of a good support player, but they can't do it all by themselves, and I think that's actually where, unfortunately, Ishtao comes into the conversation. I can't think of how many times we've said positive things about Ishtao because there haven't been a lot really to say. I mean, just admittedly from top to bottom, it has not been as clean in the jungle as we would like. There's been some weird picks. I think it was that Awilish we saw a highlight there at the very end, but that might have been literally the only highlight from that game for Ishtao. I think there's a lot of room to clean up in the jungle here for Average Joes, and once they get that under wraps, I think it's smooth sailing. I think the rest of the team will definitely be able to wrap around it well.
Right, and if they start to get to the smooth sailing point of things, we're gonna hope that Khepri has Scarab's blessing in the plushie form, because
this would make Katie
Ramsey's
cry.
not gonna let that. What, seeing Khepri just getting mauled by Ramsey? Is it like
our
sadness
Khepri
for Khepri, or like?
Oh, for the plushie. Our Khepri plushie is up high away from where the dogs can get it, because otherwise that would happen. That thing would not last long. I had to clean up a lamb chop carcass, essentially, because they were just stuffing all over the floor this morning. So, trust me, that thing would not survive very long in this house.
Well, I'll recenter myself here for our nice double screen here. Gourmeister picks and bans for the Hoofs versus the Average Joes starting now. I was very surprised, admittedly, that Set made his way through. I feel like Set has been in such an interesting spot. I'm looking for him in the top SCC bans there, 85%. Don't always see him get picked up, though, every single time he's let through, but more often than not, I think Set is probably hovering right around that 100% pick ban rate, so not surprised that the Hoofs take him off the board here. Apollo then to follow Tiamat Guan Yu. Gore, I don't think we're going to see Tiamat at all anytime soon. We're going to talk a little bit about the SPL later on. I'm interested to see where she ends up, or where that pick ends up falling in priority at the SPL level. But down here at the SCC, we have not seen Tiamat let through, but maybe one single time. Chang'e, very interesting, and I think that's the one ban that's kind of worth sinking our teeth into. I think at a lot of levels, people think that this pick is just broken, just so good that it can take over games. Haven't quite seen that translate into pick ban pressure here at the SCC level. What are your thoughts on Chang'e?
Man, what was it? Last week, the week before that, we got to see more and more of Chang'e, right? Sometimes banned, but most of the time being picked up. I think the week one, she was banned out most games in Europe. And when she comes through, my mindset is still just kind of like, I always go into it. Even when I play Chang'e, I do this where I just think, I'll heal bot, I got good stuns, I'll be immune, whatever. And then you remember how much damage she can output, and then it becomes a much scarier pick, right? It's not going to be Scylla levels of I'm going to 2-tap you with 3 abilities or something like that, but you still are taking a third of somebody's HP away with the right build and the right positioning. Like, I really like Chang'e in general, and I think she has a good place in this meta. Once upon a time, I would have tried to make her work solo as much as possible, but I think mid right now is just a comfortable place for her. Plus, you hardly have to back if you're doing well. You get enough potions at the beginning of the game, maybe to survive, or some MP5 early on, and you can just float around and out-farm your opponent pretty quickly.
Yeah, it's going to feel good if you have the Chang'e on your side. We've joined me down here.
See, I'm jealous. My dogs went outside. They're not over here. They don't want to hang out with me.
Well, Ramsey is jealous of them, I imagine. We'll get her outside here very quickly, I imagine. It's the blue crew to start off here for the Hoofs. They get Tsukiyomi Ymir as well. Gore, with the wave of bans we've seen, particularly surrounding the Yemoja out of the support, are you intrigued at all that we've seen Ymir get picked up here while the Yemoja is still available?
Yeah, Yemoja, look, I think she's still going to be prominent. I mean, you have to look at what was big about her. Yes, that in-combat healing is pretty solid, but River's Rebuke is such a good team fight. Riptide's so good. I'm really surprised to see him falling off, but I think it comes down to that, again, where do you value her and what can she bring? Ymir was rivaling things like Yemoja at the end of the SBL last year. It's not surprising to see him continuing, I should say, to do incredibly well. I think especially with the way that he plays, he just fits this current meta and the way they want to, and he's a good fighter against Athena. You throw up a wall, and either she just dashed in and she's not getting away, Or maybe you cut the dash off, either coming towards you or
Great
getting
point.
away. It either blocks the slow from connecting from the Athena dash, or it stops her from running off, and you're able to start finding the potential to kill her. I actually really like him in terms of dealing with someone like Athena, the taunts and everything that comes with her.
Yeah, so much of that utility, that power, that priority feels like it leans on that wall connecting and making the difference in some of these fights. Heimdall, I've loved to see the rise of this pick. Look, I mean, it takes a little time to get there. It just feels like he just does such good damage as the game goes on. You could say that about every hunter. There's just something about Heimdall that just feels so good. The auto attacks just feel like they chunk so much more damage. Maybe the animation team just did such a good job on that god or whatever it is. But Heimdall certainly feels great. This is a bit of a traditional pick here. 1 game played, 100% win rate for the Thoth out of the mid lane, Gore, and there certainly is some setup to make those final judgments easier to hit.
And this is a good pick for Baskin. I think this is going to feel pretty at home all around. And again, it does a lot of damage from far away. It fits well with that Scylla. I think it's going to be able to compete pretty well with Camazotz as well. Like tracing them down when they have that low HP, Thoth is going to be able to finish them off. Like you said, Heimdall, who I have to agree with, from level 1 versus his level 20 with the right build, feels night and day in comparison. I mean, it's two different gods at that point, at least is what it feels like.
Wow.
I think he's going to have a pretty good matchup. Maybe not the rotationary power of an Athena Chernabog on the other side, but still something pretty solid.
Yemoja, 10th pick here, Gormizer, against all odds. We've seen high ban rates for the Yemoja across the SCC. What do you think this average Joe's team is looking to do? What does this team comp tell you is their win condition?
Man, Scylla and maybe a little bit of Chernabog in there. Like, Camazotz is going to be solid, right? Like, there's a lot of setup and survivability on this team in the terms of Camazotz and his self-sustain, Yemoja and what she brings to team fights. Chernabog's ability to get into the fight, though, is going to make a big difference towards the late game. Like you said, every hunter towards that later portion of the game is going to hit really hard. But Scylla feels like the funnel right now, right? If I'm taunting, it's to get them in line for Scylla. If I'm going to go in as Camazotz, it's to get them low for Scylla. If I'm Yemoja and I'm riptiding, it's to bring them back for Scylla. She's the one that they're playing through.
Mid lane has been the name of the game, and we've got a matchup for you here in game number 1, Hoofs versus Average Joe's. It's Finch and Aggro on the call.
Thank you, Dawson and Gormizer on the desk. Indeed, Finch and Aggro here as we move into game number 1 between the Hoofs, as you just said. Don't worry, we'll get this all updated for you here shortly. But Aggro, you told us coming into this game, met Yankee in here for them this time, not Gino. In fact, it will not be Gino. Maybe he intended for something like that to happen with that name of his. But either way, I think that's going to affect this team, man. I consider Gino one of the next best supports up if someone was needed up there in the SPL. And as good as Met Yankee is, his absence will be noted.
Definitely. I agree. I mean, Gino is a huge part of when this team is doing well, but to be fair, this team hasn't exactly been doing well so far here to kick off the Season 8 of the NASCC. I mean, you've got a team with Baskin and Mask and Snoopy and Gino and Meerkat. Like, you're thinking that this is going to be a top of the SPL type of team, but just has not been the case. Look at what Meta's doing. He's actually trying to invade on this red. He denies the red to Baronary, but Griff's just going to pick it up, and Met Yankee's just kind of trudging along, slowed by that Invader's Curse. Not exactly the highest value invade, right? He doesn't get the buff. He doesn't poke anybody out, but he does deny that buff to Baronary, which does matter. He denies purple XP and gold to Griff because Elion just finishes the buff, can't wait around and have it beat him up during that entire time. And now they can just go back and get their own wave because Snoopy got a lot of the wave by himself, and then they go back and get their own purple. So the only concern is if Met stays level 1 and dies for it. Otherwise, I think that invade's actually pretty successful.
Watch yourself. Looks like they did evade the trouble. This could be first blood, though. Baronary takes too much poke in the middle lane. Great stun from Masked into the Thoth damage, and Ishtau could be right behind him if the cooldowns come up. But Baskin does not seem to have it. Ishtau barely survives, and already Herculean Hoofs off to a great start. And this is that same conversation. It's restored artifact for that start here for Baskin. It's Thoth in the middle lane looking for pressure. I think there's a lot of options for mid laners this year, and how they want to build as Baskin just barely misses the evade and punish, and I think he's going to pay the iron price, avoids the stun, even use beads, and Baronary's abilities are not off cooldown yet, but they get the kill in the end, as we knew they would. Now that's maybe with a chance to get Ishtao, but he blinks back towards safety.
Yeah, I understand Mask wanting to play that slow and not dump the second part of his combat dodge into the shell, which obviously won't kill Ishtao. If he starts auto-attacking him, maybe he gets out of range. That's just a lose-lose situation for Mask where he can't end up actually picking up that kill on the other side. So good shell usage at least forces the blink out from Mask, but a good rotation in from El Leon and just a good fight to take if Baskin's going to get a little bit too greedy, which he certainly does by trying to dash in. I wonder what the plan is for Baskin with this starter, skipping the starter item, rushing towards those boots. Restored Artifact has a good amount of power, good amount of MP5, but you're lacking some overall sustain, of course. But I wonder if he's going to try and go Bumba's Hammer. I mean, I haven't played Bumba's Hammer Thoth, to be honest with you. I have no idea if that's what he's going to be going for, but I feel like Gem of Focus would be really good on Thoth. I mean, you're getting free procs with your 3 constantly. Pendulum of Age is obviously very good on just about every mage, so I'm a little surprised to see Baskin forego a starter item. I think that it does make you significantly weaker in the early stages of the game. I think there's a real trade-off there.
There is, and I know Baskin got first blood earlier, but that's not the whole early game. He still is certainly under some pressure. But we've seen this a little bit from these mid-mages where they'll just later on in the build just go ahead and complete our starter item once they've kind of made it to that point when they're level 20 or so and just grab it outright. A lot of options there for them. And take a look here at Mass. Also another interesting option here, the Golden Blade for that first item with him. Does Achilles need the help in the jungle? Is that what this is about? Maybe increasing some of that clear speed?
His clear speed is pretty slow, mostly because his cooldowns are really long. You don't want to you max a 3 in solo lane the vast majority of the time because you can use it effectively to get 2 procs. You're not getting 2 procs in the jungle really ever, so you have to max the 1, and the 1's a fairly long cooldown, so you're kind of left with this awkward position.
Yeah.
And with Eye of the Jungle already there, you think maybe it's worth that extra investment.
Well, Snoopy doesn't have a whole lot of options here. Ishtao cleans up the kill, even makes sure Snoopy uses the ultimate first before putting him down. Baskin gets aggressive. That's evade and punish used. Defender of Olympus has been channeled as well, and nowhere for Baskin to go. And Baronary saying, hey, where's my I'm a monster target? Patiently waits with it. I don't think he actually gets Met Yankee. Not particularly needed when all 5 members of the team are in mid. 2 kills going the way of Average Joe's in the middle lane.
Yeah, so if this is your first Herculean Hoofs game that you're watching this season, you go, how can a team like Basket and Mask and the crew, be looking so rough to start the season? It's plays just like that. I mean, there is no reward for Baskin dashing on to Elion there. It is 80 damage from evade and punish is your reward, and the risk is great that you're just gonna get instantly committed onto. Uzi didn't even need to be there. Baskin's dead basically no matter what. As soon as he dashes, just a really, really bad decision in that mid lane. And I mean, you gotta you can't just rely on being really good players mechanically and just having a lot of experience. I mean, these guys like Uzi and Elion and Griff, I mean, they've been around the competitive scene, not at the highest level, but at the SCC or SCL level for a long time. They're coming in hungry, man. They're gonna try. They've got something to prove every time you're playing against Baskin. You're trying to give them your best. Can't just rely on out-mechanicking people forever. I think that's pretty clear from Hoofs.
I think so too, man. These teams are just too good in the SCC and obviously up in the SPL for just pure outplay to be an option. Unless you're Paul, we saw at Worlds that apparently he can somehow find a way to just outplay people, but I don't think that's going to work for most of us out here. You're going to need to come in with sort of a big picture that can eclipse what your opponents are doing, understanding where their break points are and how you can capitalize on that. And they've been a bit slow to start here in this game. We've seen that happen to the Hoofs before, where they can get a little bit too comfortable in the early game and end up struggling. Now Meerkat has been caught out, does use the beads and escapes for now, but Ishtao forced to give up on the chase, only hits him with 2 actual swipes down. So Leon drops the ultimate. Ishtao even getting Defender of Olympus, and he needed every bit of it to stay alive. Even the shell not enough as he eventually falls, as does Mask. But Uzi wants to keep on going. Taunt into I'm a Monster, gives Baronary a double.
And this is just easy money. When you've got the Athena-Scylla combination, it just couldn't be easier. Baronary off to a great start because he doesn't need to work too hard, honestly. That's not a shot at all. Sometimes that's your job as the mid laner. It's just hit the layups. You know, they're feeding you the pick and roll, and you should have some easy shots all night. And that's exactly what this composition is designed to do. Umoja, not exactly the best setup in the world, but also not horrible. You end up getting some pretty good options there with the Athena, of course. And you just let Baroneri go to work. And whenever Mass doesn't have beads, whenever Met Yankee doesn't have beads, you've got some easy targets for this combo to work on.
And Baroneri now 3-1-2 in the middle lane with an experience lead over Baskin. That's starting to seem a bit significant here as he's only 1-2-1, has struggled in this early game to avoid the pressure. Now Snoopy, using the Bifrost wisely, does manage to escape over in left and falling into the clutches of Leon and Griff. And that's an adjustment for this Average Joe's roster, right? I'm pretty sure during the SCC qualifiers and even week 1 in the SCC, they had Leon in mid, but they've swapped him over to this support role, trying to maximize everyone's strength on this team. And the thing is, I think you can put Leon just about anywhere on your team, but I just love him out of the jungle, man. He's got such strong carry potential there.
Yeah, he does, and that's certainly the role that I think most would think of him as. Griff gonna go aggressive, good beads onto Snoopy, gonna dash through, but Snoopy's Bifrost there. Ishtao lurking. It's a matter of if Met Yankee can get in range to support his Hunter in time, but he can't. Nice little vampiric bats to the tower. Thereby Ishtao picks up the kill through some nice aggression by Griff.
Well, Mass continuing to get aggressive here. He's got the damage. Ishtao low, falling to the executing Mass, calculating correctly. He's swinging hard, isn't he? No, the Warrior Tabai and the Golden Blade as the start. Neither one of them could withstand the damage, but now they've got a chance to collapse onto the opposing jungler who's stuck inside the River's Rebuke. Uzi here as well. And man, has Uzi been all across the map, using this Defender of Olympus so effectively.
And this is exactly what this Average Joe's team wants to do. We're talking about moving Leon into support. You know, what can we do with that? Why do you think that could be the play? It's because Elion's main strength for this team is always going to be his communication and his way that he wants to play the map. And him and Uzi have played together for so long. I mean, I was on a team with both of them back in Season 2. You know, they've been playing together for that long. It doesn't matter whether Leon's in jungle or in support. If he's saying, all right, Uzi, ult me now, he's getting ulted right now. That's the way that it works with those two. So I think that this is the exact type of pick that Uzi can succeed on, and I love the way that they've been playing.
Snoopy doing all he can to evade the pressure in duo, and it works out. Leon dropping a ton of his abilities, try and lock him in, just did not quite work out. We even saw some aggression there in mid. Baroneri nearly soloing Baskin, evade and punish. Comes up just in time for him to elude danger. Back in the middle lane as well, but we're starting to see that yes, Basket probably has the poke advantage, but the all-in potential is with Average Joe's. It's with Baroneri in the mid, and I think it just might be with them all around. Their ability to bring in Uzi for that mitigation, then suddenly all a bunch of damage, and Ishtao can chase down kills. They've got so much potential to all-in and clean up. It's going to be tough for the Hoofs here. What is the beam where they're going to be their strongest? Is it poking? Is it going to be getting picks? Because Average Joe's, it feels like, are looking to take the fight to them.
I think that this composition for the Hoofs is pretty difficult to execute because you've got great poke damage coming from the Thoth, of course, and Meerkat can follow up on that poke really, really effectively. I mean, I think Tsukiyomi solo was really good. Already going for a little bit more of a bruiser style with the shifter shield first item. I think that makes a lot of sense. Baskin gets someone to 40%, Meerkat ults them, and then maybe Mask gets there to try and help them. But overall, they want to try and play these fights tank first, then backliner if we have to, but if we can get some priority poke on a backliner with this Thoth, we're going to take it. The problem is that I think that the front line here for the Hoofs is really easy to go on, as Mask going to try and get something started, but immediately Uzi's here with a 3-man Thoth.
Yeah, you're going to win a lot of fights if you start him off that way, but the River's Rebuke does not keep them locked in. In comes Griff, getting to be a part of the action as well. As Meerkat, or rather, the ultimate's coming out from Meerkat indeed as he tries to make his way into the backline. Forced to use beads as well, and Baroneri is his target, but Sentinel gets him out. Ishtao cleans up Mast way in the back of the ultimate from Ishtao. Should give him a get-out-of-jail-free card, but Uzi has been locked down. This should even up the numbers a bit here for the Hoofs. There's nowhere for Uzi to go.
Yeah, that's the kill you got to get, is a nice root from Baskin, but Elion just enough Omi in the back pocket in order to place down that Riptide. I mean, that's a great initiation there by Uzi, but it's just so far from the rest of the team. Baroneri's ultimate was already down. He used that right away at the very beginning of the team fight. Definitely a little bit too early on the trigger there. You've got to know that most of the time when you're playing Scylla, I think that it is a trap to try and kill people with your ultimate. You should really be using it for survivability a lot of the time, or just to get your guaranteed damage off where you can. The resets should really be just a bonus if it happens, but I think I see too many players trying too hard to get their reset going. That time Baronary too early on the trigger, because when you're playing a composition like this where it's centered around Athena taunt into I'm a Monster, your ultimate becomes less valuable as an escape tool, and we're going to place more value on how much damage it's going to be able to do. Is it following up on the right target? So bit of a normal Scylla ultimate there, where it needs to be a special Scylla ultimate for an Athena-style composition. But still not too bad for average Joes. I mean, Elion gets a really good ult. You still get Meerkat's beads on the back end as he overcommitted maybe a little bit, though no one ended up turning on him, but he was pretty deep in that back line. Still get 1-for-1. Not a horrible position for the Joes to be in.
No, it's not, but I think we got to give Maz some credit. He is the one that kind of put that initial pressure on the Baronary, and I don't know if the ultimate was for safety there, or if they thought they had turn potential, but either way, it didn't quite pan out. So they're going to need to make sure that that's not a problem, because Mast is absolutely swinging at this point in the game. It seems like he can take just about any 1v1 on the map too, and that pressure is going to be valuable to the Hoofs as average Joe set up for the Fury to spawn, take a reset, and might even just be heading right on over here. But they don't have Ishtar on this side of the map with them, and even if they do, the Hoofs are lying in wait. It's a 5-man grouping for them. Baskin shown on that board, and they will get aggressive. Met Yankee blinks in, freeze, wall, locks Leon down, and that kills as easy as you like for the Hoofs. They set a trap, and then Leon steps into it.
Met's played well so far, filling in for Gino. I mean, this Ymir, there's a lot of picks on the other side that can cause him problems. Camazotz usually is a pick that gives Ymir some trouble because of his mobility and that range slow. That's, as we all know, Ymir's greatest enemy. You've got Scylla, Athena. I mean, those are tough for him. I think that he's navigated this early game well.
Ishtar in some trouble, but he turns things around, goes up to the ultimate, but can't get to Baskin, who uses the Aegis to buy himself some time. But Griff uses his ultimate to catch up, then dashes through the wall for some extra range. That is some good safety for him. Meerkat, though, wants to keep up the chase onto Griff. Can't get quite around the corner. It's Uzi, the next one into the fray. As I'm a Monster doesn't connect onto Meerkat. Baronary just going for him. Man, you don't have to... I feel like he's thinking too hard. With this kind of comp, just follow up, man.
Yep, you're just going to wait for Uzi to say, I'm taunting this guy, and you go, okay. You just wait for that. You don't got to rush it too much. But he was pretty low in that instance. But now it matters because he can stick around with this Yamoja sustain. He doesn't have the... I mean, Crush still good secure, but not as good.
But it is enough. The average Joe's managed to secure the Fury. Leon is low, and Mast can certainly clean this one up, but can't find the execute. Leon puts on the juke shoots, and Mast ends up in a coffin. What a turnaround for the Joes as Snoopy forced to use the Bifrost in order to retreat. This fight started off with Uzi not having the Defender of Olympus. I think he might have been trying to save Leon when they caught him on that great engage from Met Yankee, but apparently they didn't even need it. A great fight for him.
No, they didn't, and that's just credit to this Yamoja sustain, being able to keep it up. I mean, this is why, you know, set 2, Yamoja goes unpicked on band, and I'm kind of sitting here thinking, like, are we sure Ares is that good? Because I don't think he's Yamoja good. This character just does a lot for you that other supports can't, and I think that sustain was really critical. The fact that Meerkat ends up turning onto Ishtar, but Ishtar is able to get out. They still might manage to kill Baskin. I mean, it's such a great dive from the Joes with this composition. Camazotz, just the bane of every mage player's existence. You can't do anything about that ultimate. You can't Aegis it because it lasts too long. You can't dodge it. It feels pretty much undodgeable. And you can't peel it either. So Ishtar's going to get that damage off no matter what. And then he goes in, uses the final swoop of Bat Out of Hell to get out of danger, and then Griff comes swooping in and ends up being the one to kill Baskin once his Aegis is down. Just good coordination from the Joes, and then really using that sustain to its fullest potential.
Yeah, I think Griff has been getting really involved with that ultimate. You talked about how he cleaned up that last kill, but using it all game long when the squad needs him. Average Joe has been 5-man grouping at time because Griff can just make it over there. Looks like he's going into that short sword, a crit build. Going to be the idea for him on the back of this, and I don't know if I dislike it. This isn't the tankiest version of this roster we've ever seen, with Mask going full damage and a Tsukiyomi solo. Should be able to get good value out of it, I'd imagine, if he wants to go that crit build.
I agree. No Thorns for Meerkat. I think that up against the Scylla, that makes sense. I do think a lot of the time, Beads Aegis on these solo laners, I think it's kind of a trap at a high level because you just end up being so much less effective. You lose so much threat by having this Beads Aegis. So the reason that a lot of times solo laners get blown up is because if we don't blow them up, our carry can't play the game. So let's turn and use our CC on them. As teams have realized that, solo laners have gone, well, I don't like that. I don't want to get CC'd and killed, so I'm going to start going beads. But as soon as teams just stop committing too early onto warriors, I think that things like beads and solo lane really lose value really quickly. For certain characters and certain comps, I think it's necessary. I think beads, for example, in this game, very necessary for Meerkat.
Yep.
But I think that instead of beads Aegis, the vast majority of the time, beads Thorns works better because it keeps your threat level higher and has a similar function of dissuading the enemy team from going on you. Now, when you're an assassin, you don't have those tanky base stats. There's a Scylla on the enemy team. Maybe the Aegis makes a little bit more sense, but I wonder if Thorns, even in this instance, would have been better for Meerkat. I think the only thing that keeps me in his camp of the Aegis being better is the Scylla, but if that's basically any other mage, I think that Beads Thorns is probably the call for most solo laners.
We'll keep our eye on if Meerkat can find some Aegis value out of that relic then, particularly when he's reacting to Baronary. It is indeed that Rage first here for Griff, so he's going to want to get that stacked up and then follow up a little bit more crit on the back side of it, I would imagine, has the Executioner there, a little bit of Shred, and then adding that crit on top of it to damage just about everyone here on this map. So average Joes have slowed the pace down a little bit. With the Fury down, gotten the Greater Scorpion and the Pyromancer, there's really not much of them to do right now. They've been doing a good job of kind of stretching this map out and getting their lead where they can. But it's just not out of reach. 4,000 experience and 3,400 gold. I mean, that is good. They've been playing well, but Herculean Hoofs have the potential to come back into this one any time. A big final judgment or an execute coming out from Mass can really turn these team fights around, and we've seen it from this composition. They've got that potential to respond to average Joe's aggression. It's just I don't think you can let the first thing that happens in the fight be Uzi taunts into Baronary's damage. You got to find a way to break that up.
Exactly, and I think that Met Yankees walls could be key. I really like the Magi's for Met in this game, making sure that Athena taunt isn't just guaranteed on him. He doesn't go beads. He's bringing a little bit more utility to the team with this Blink and Sunder, which I like a lot more for that Guardian role. Elion priced into those beads because of the engage we saw earlier. I don't know if he was planning on going beads, but I'll bet you after getting Blink frozen and insta-killed, he was probably thinking, all right, I guess I don't really have a choice on this option. Plus, Yobota's not really the traditional Blink character either way, but I think that Met Yankees engages and counter engages are going to be really critical. How good are his walls going to be? Can his Sunder be on the right targets on that front line and allow this lower power build for Baskin to pay off on these frontliners?
This is good work, though, from Uzi. He can get to the fight quickly, so threaten the other side of the map. Get some value here while you can. That Winding Wave should be able to step in and do some decent damage to the tower. Uzi will even take a back here. Maybe finish up this Void Stone first before he ults back in. A great power spike there for him to increase the damage and make it so he's not as damaged by Met Yankee and Baskin, but in comes the River Rebuke. They've got Mast locked down, but the damage still not there yet. In moves Ishtal for Mast, forced to use the ultimate just to retreat, but in the backline goes Meerkat looking for Joes to try and take down, but Griff gets really at Met Yankee and even pushes further forward looking for Snoopy and gets a big crit. That's a double for Griff, but Meerkat does manage to get Leon, but not all that worth it as Uzi cleans him up right behind. A 3-for-1 in favor of the Joes.
And don't the Joes just look so much more organized in these team fights? I mean, it seems like there is a clear direction that they are going for. Griff's timing on these ultimates has been perfect. Ishtal has been able to push his limits very effectively in this game, doing enough damage, but not taking too much damage, able to get out on the back end every single time. And the Hoofs feel like they're just scrambling to figure out who to hit in the midst of the fight. You know, are we on the same target? The basics still seem to be a little bit out of whack for this team right now. And the Joes, they're a well-oiled machine, baby. They're making it work.
This is an important fire giant, though. Baskin has final judgment, so Uzi's got to be on Baskin watch and make sure that doesn't steal away this FG but they collapse on him before it even becomes an issue. Another kill for Griff, who's improved to 5-0-6, earning the Griffin Slays moniker my man used to use. And this crit build came in clutch for him in that battle with Snoopy. That decided it much, much sooner than I think it otherwise would have been, and really took a lot of the mystery out of that engagement. So Fire Giant now on the Joes in just about every tower left to get this lead. It's about to get a lot worse for the Hoofs before it gets better.
Wow, I was going to say it's about to get a lot worse. Ozzy's about to get Bumba's Hammer, but he's not going Bumba's Hammer. He's going 0 starter item all the way across the board. I just can't. Maybe he feels like he needs to be tankier, but sell whatever you got to sell, my guy. I don't care what it is in order to make sure you're getting Bumba's Hammer on this character. I think it is that good on Athena that I don't think there's a single item that I wouldn't sell in order to grab it. I'm very surprised that Ozzy isn't going for it, because I was about to say that it's going from bad to worse. I think that Joe's hitting those 20 power spikes is likely stronger than the Hoofs. I mean, Meerkat went Bluestone in lane in order to try and keep that clear high, and he was able to do that, but now it means that you don't get a chance to get Bumba's Hammer. At this point in the game, you've got to go for that upgraded Bluestone, which is good on Tsukiyomi, but not, oh my god, what is this character doing to me good, kind of like Bumba's Hammer usually is for him. I think that average Joes are in a position now. I mean, you've got the upgraded starter on Griff. Leon's just a couple levels away. You're in a very, very strong power position, even more so than what the gold lead, which is high, would tell you.
And I think the Joes are kind of leaning into a bit more of a win more strategy. I mean, hard to pretend Bumba's Hammer wouldn't be part of that. Don't catch me saying that, but I don't know. Maybe they consider Mail of Renewal, which I'd got to think is where we're going here, as the best option here for Ozzy, as he takes care of that tier 2 over in right. And he's just going to move over to mid. I love this. Average Joe's kind of keep him in a stalemate here in left and let Ozzy clean up. But they're ready to pull the trigger. Rivers Rebuke used in Baskin takes a ton of damage. Taunt lands, and I'm a Monster cleans up easily. Even lands on the Met Yankee for the second shot for additional damage. And the Herculean Hoofs are forced to retreat. They're routed, but they still can't even make it happen. Mass Force used the ultimate just to get out of danger.
Yeah, anytime Leon gets a set of beads with Riptide, the fight's over, because Ozzy's taunt means instant death for whoever he hits. Snoopy has to respect every single taunt with that Athena. You have to give it up instantly. So it's a great ultimate from Leon. He hasn't really been going for the horizontal ultimates, the ones where Umoja's kind of come in on the flank, end up pinning you up against the wall, nowhere to go. It's been, I'm going to ult and then double Riptide on the entrance, or the exit rather, as Meerkat finds his exit quickly. And then we're going to end up just killing you that way. And it's been very, very effective. Leon's looked very good on Umoja, and that is not an easy god to pick up and dominate with right away.
No, the average Joes look great in general here, don't they? And those Umoja walls that you're talking about, those are some of the ones that really make you feel like there's not a whole lot you can do when you get isolated on those horizontal ones, but he just hasn't needed them here today. They'll back up, clear the tier 1, get this tier 2. The left and right side Phoenixes are already down, and Ishtal will continue his assault on Baskin by going into the Bat out of Hell and sticking to him, daring him to have an answer with no relics available. There's the kill. Ishtal getting work. Ozzy responds with a 2-man taunt over the wall. Now Ishtal low and forced to retreat, but it is a Umoja healing of his Baronary. Flattens Snoopy, and he even takes Meerkat with the ultimate as well. Sikkim does it, and this game is done. Medianki, killing him or not, unnecessary as the Deicide fully opens up the path for Average Joes to take game 1.
Oh, Meerkat spawned, but it didn't matter because that's what's going to happen to him every single time. Average Joes just came in with a much more cohesive game plan. I think that the Hoofs, I mean, it's not just draft. I think the draft does matter, but at the end of the day, I mean, you look at how those team fights went, and it just did not look close in any single one of them.
No, it really didn't, huh? Just that goes to show you some of the value of those Guardians they had, though. Athena and Umoja seem too good to end up on one team, and I think we got a great example of why, especially when you have about the best follow-up you can ask for in Scylla right behind them. So, great draft there from Average Joes. We'll have to hopefully see some adjustments for Herculean Hoofs in our next game, which we'll be bringing to you along with the breakdown in just a couple minutes.
game there for Average Joe's in game number 1. Little contested at the onset, but by the end of it, Gore, this one was not particularly close at all.
Yeah, there was a tipping point, and honestly, I don't even know where exactly to dissect it. Like, I look up at one point, and I'm like, okay, things seem pretty even, seem pretty equal. And then I look down for a second, I look back, and all of a sudden, I mean, they just start popping off on the other side. Griff had a really good game. Ranieri had a really good game. Everybody on Average Joe's, like, if this was the level of play or the style of play that we had seen out of them over the last couple of weeks, they would not be an 0-2 team, right? It just felt much better. Maybe some of that was created because the Herculean Hoofs were having trouble keeping up with them, but there were just so many moments where, first off, Griff and these rotations, like, I saw it on the Apollo. We got to see it here on the Chernobog. If you let him in the team fight, he is going to win that team fight. Like, that's just the sentence there. That is all that it takes, is just stop Griff from existing, and you have a better fighting chance. I think there was a little bit of a combination.
There you go.
Baskin didn't quite have the damage output that you would expected. Went for an ethereal staff at one point. Was a little more tanky, not quite so heavy on the just straight-up damage output versus what Ranieri did, which was slaughter anyone and everyone that stood in their way. I also think I have to give credits to Ishtao. Kind of tore into him, like accidentally. Didn't mean to be as mean as I was at the very beginning of it, but had a much better game today than what we've gotten to see out of the last couple of weeks. So that was very important for them in the jungle, having that come together.
No, and a fantastic game from Ishtao and everyone on Average Joe's. The fact that there's no Globo Gym team here in the NA SCC is
that's why they're losing.
A lost opportunity, right? I mean, especially if that were somehow in the finals, but neither here nor there. Griff undying here in this game. Ranieri 14,000 damage and some change. Uzi, though, talk about second highest damage in the game here, Gore, on this Athena. Griff, of course, taking that mantle of top damage. So many of those taunts were just connecting on such a consistent basis. There was a triple taunt at some point in the mid lane there from Uzi, and that just really set the snowball in motion here for this Average Joe's team. It just felt like they kind of got what they wanted in picks and bans, and they were able to convert that into good energy there in the game.
I mean, for the longest time, one of the things we would talk about being so powerful with someone like Erlang Shen, right? There's a lot of control that he brings to a fight. Obviously, his auto attacks are really solid, but sometimes it was just his ult, and talking about the fact that a taunt from him could be a lot. Imagine that, but on a regular cooldown. Yeah, it's not going to heal you and do anywhere near as much damage or setup, but at the end of the day, Athena's taunt, like you said, 3-4-man taunts are going to win you a team fight, especially if you have a good mage. Ranieri, again, it funneled kind of through him. Griff got to pop off as well, but I think that Scylla really showcased why Athena can be so prominent. Because, yeah, Athena does all that little bit of secret damage herself, gets up to the top 2 on her own, but also she could just set up your mage to slaughter everyone that stands in their way.
I remember back, like, one of the first play tests we did as a caster team with a development team. I was way out of my depth. I was worse than everyone, but I got Athena, and I like walked my way into a 4-man Athena taunt one game, and that won us the game. It was a Phoenix defense, and that's one of the proudest moments of my life. And I'll never forget it. Picks and bans to save me from the sadness of my own past here. Please, production, take me away from this moment. Game number 2 for Average Joe's and the Herculean Hoofs now. Hoofs playing from behind here in this one after what was admittedly a pretty tough game number 1. There are probably some priority shifts that can happen there, Gore. I think the Emoja falling down to 10th pick was certainly interesting, and I think immediately taking away the Scylla is a good swap.
Yeah. I mean, look, there's not a lot of things that I would come into this game and immediately ban, but when you think about it, when Chang'e was up there last time, you ban out Scylla instead of the Chang'e if that comes to be the thing you have to trade. I think there's still a threat to be had by other mages out there, but if you take away the potency, kill it at the root, it at least forces Average Joe's to shift up some gameplay styles, right? But at this point, with Guan Yu still available, I honestly think that you maybe look either towards something like, what was it, like the Emoja that you had mentioned was 10th pick.
Yep.
Maybe you have to ban out things like the Athena here, just to make sure that she doesn't fall into my hands, because I think she's going to be just as potent, and maybe even more potent with something like a Chang'e behind her. I mean, you think of the old one, too, that used to be Athena Medusa, right? You taunt into a Medusa ult, and then it just magically comes together. Imagine taunting into a Chung ult. You get 3 people in a taunt, then 3 people in a Chung ult. Number 3 there is going to be sitting around for a while. He doesn't get to play the game for 10 seconds at that point. Like, he is going to be hurt, and I think that's something that, again, the control maybe in the Athena could come through.
Yeah, I mean, the ability to combo off of that taunt is obviously just what makes that pick so strong, so potent. So what a world we live in here where average Joes get Yemoja 10th overall there in game number 1, and now Yemoja is within the first 3 bans of the game here in game number 2. Sobek follows alongside as well. I don't know what it's going to take for us to see a Guan Yu or a Tiamat here again, but the Guan Yu pick just, or the Guan Yu ban, excuse me, just makes so much sense with what that kit brings to the table. But I like the way the Hoofs have played the ban phase so far, Gore. That's what you buy yourself if you're in this first pick slot. You can play around the pick you know you want. And with all the praising we've done of Athena, she remains available, and the Hoofs will take her first.
Yeah, I really like this one. Again, I'm scared when I see Griff playing Apollo, but I think getting the Athena early on, all that stuff I just said that average Joes could do, now the Herculean Hoofs can do, right? You give Baskin something like the Yanis that we know he's really good at. If he wants to, I guess he could go back to the Thoth, although it wasn't necessarily a performance that immediately makes me want to lock it back in. It gives you this opportunity to play around the pick. The question then becomes, do they send it solo lane, which, as of right now, if I had to guess, would go up against something like a Camazotz, depending on what they lock in?
Ooh.
Or do they send it to the support role? Do they send it into the jungle? There's 3 places, really, that we've seen Athena flex. Jungle may be the least of those lately. Actually, I'd argue support has been the least of those lately. We've seen her a lot in the jungle and solo lane these last couple of weeks. And you give it to Baskin with his Yanis, this feels like a very easy combo team for the Hoofs.
Right. Well, I mean, look, it's got such a similar core to what worked for average Joes in game 1. The Athena and the Chernobog remain the exact same. They just swapped teams here, and that's exactly what worked for Joes in game number 1. You pair that with some shotgun burst damage from the Giannis. Not going to be the Scylla, but there's still that potential for comboing off a taunt into the portal, into the ultimate. I mean, the ability for the Hoofs to just pile on damage after what we've seen from 3 picks just mirrors what average Joes was able to do in game number 1. The answer then is the question then becomes what average Joes do to answer. Well, they find some global pressure of their own with this Apollo, Camazotz as well, and then Gore. They haven't seen much Nike, but it's the 3rd pick here for the Joes.
I think Ramsey knows that you have those pine cones on your desk, by the way.
Oh, she sees
the entire
it
time you're talking,
she's
she
right
was
at eye
watching.
level?
Yeah, she's watching your hands very carefully. Like, it
Not
looked like
even
she was
listening to
dotting
me,
a lawn.
Gar.
Maybe she is. Maybe she's just a better Smite analyst than we really know. She's been sitting back there since her inception, learning about all of this. Oh no, never mind. It is definitely the pine cones. That definitely got her attention. But back to the Camazotz, the Nike, as you had said, they really are, I think, crucial here because, like you said, Apollo bringing in like a very large global presence, but Camazotz Nike are just going to be what feels like unkillable. It forces a Sunder there for the Nike. Camazotz has a lot of sustain on his own. I think they're going to be very happy on the side of the average Joes to have a very forward front line there. Camazotz being able to kind of flex into it as well and be this tanky assassin for your team to really set up someone like Horizon and Apollo.
Love me some Ganesh. Love seeing the Nesher come through here. The lockdown, the ultimate. It's got about everything you need. Dharmic Pillars is such a good ultimate, and it feels like it's on such a low cooldown where you can just kind of throw it out. Even if you're just looking for one pick, oftentimes it feels like you're getting away with it. I'm trying to assess how many little pine cone things are about to be all over my bed sheets. But Ganesh is enough to pull my attention away from the pine cone just for a minute. I think it's a pretty good way for the Hoofs to round out their draft here. On the flip side, though, Gore, I do want to hear your thoughts on this Raijin. We saw one earlier on today that just absolutely melted out damage. Aggro thinks Raijin's in a pretty good spot. I would say the data that we've seen on him so far tends to exacerbate or agree with his sentiment there.
Yeah.
What do you think of the Raijin here in this composition?
I mean, exact same way, right? He's in a good spot. I think he is in exactly where you want him to be. He's not getting picked every single game, but he's showing up just enough that you know he's still good. And I think his damage, again, at range, still pretty solid. He's going to be able to compete with the Giannis pretty well here. And that Thunder Crash, we've seen it engage, we've seen it disengage. I think he's safe enough that you really get to make it work for your team. The thing I'm looking at here is his ult and how it's going to work with everybody else. Again, I always start thinking of the taunts and the pulls that you can do, the fears and the taunts, I guess, as the technical terms for those on
Right.
the Raijin ult, and comboing that with things like Kabrakan, Kamazot's, Nike, even the Apollo. I think it's looking good for the average Joes, but I'd be lying to you if I told you I thought they were going to be able to come out on top easily. I think they are going to have to fight a lot harder for this win versus what the Hoofs have, because Ganesh, like you said, like I could go on and on about Ganesh, but every single draft they got, every god they picked up for the Herculean side of things, just looks good.
Well, good. Now that I'm off camera, I can steal this pine cone back without anyone getting angry at me.
You
Game number
monster.
2, Average Joe's Herculean Hooves. Let's kick it off.
Yeah, thanks for passing it to us, Dave. You keep Ramsey in check over there. Finch and Aggro still as we move into this critical game 2. And I think the desk had it right here, Aggro. Herculean Who's had themselves in a much better spot, if for no reason than just the Athenas on their side. And that's how strong I think that God is right now. But they've gone for a bit of an aggressive drash over here for the average Joes with Kabrakan support, Ishtao back on this Kamazots. And Uzi on Nike, a pick we don't see a whole lot. How would you rate this one just on the drafts and how these teams ended up?
I like the Hoofs draft a lot more because it feels more cohesive. It feels like they have a better plan. They've got get on top of the back line and don't let them run away from us, because we've got insane mobility and great dive potential between the Chernobog ult, the Tsukiyomi ult, the Giannis ult, and of course the Athena ult jumping in on all that kind of stuff. So I like the mobility that they have. I'm a little bit worried about their consistent damage output. That would be the one concern that I have. I mean, Giannis still not exactly the burst mage that something like Scylla is. So can Baskin be impactful on this pick off of big Athena taunts from Mask? But that's the thing, is that before, that was always the question with Athena compositions. Like, you know, what's the follow-up to the Athena taunt? Like, what's happening after the Athena taunt? Now the Athena taunt does damage, and she doesn't, you know, she's an independent woman who doesn't need the help anymore. You know, she's got it all, she's got the damage and the setup all for herself. I don't think that's as big of a factor as it used to be in this game.
A lot of tools now at their disposal. They're caught in the portal. Not enough follow-up damage after that for the kill. A lot of these builds are reflected, huh? Basically the same across the board. Bluestone, Bumbas, Conduit Gem. The only problem here is that Griff did this entirely wrong, put the starter item in the second slot. That's just
He always does,
curse on
man.
his house. Yeah, always does.
Yeah.
Curse on his house. We'll pay for it later. As Leon gets aggressive, Mask is the early target. Does find a taunt, but it's just not enough with Baron Eric coming over the wall and Ishtao's damage. So once again, the Joes get out of the box early with first blood. And I think they want a little bit more action. If they can lock down Met Yankee and Snoopy, Leon goes in a bit alone. Baron Eric needs help as Baskin hunts him down. Beads keeps him alive. Thunder Crash in, but does not quite result in any more kills as they're still fighting over on the left.
That's an alpha move. Thunder crash in and immediately turn and walk away. Like, I could have gotten out, but I'll do it on my own time. You know what I mean? I like that move. It's the exact same rotation almost that killed Baskin just a little bit earlier than it was last time. And part of me wonders if that's the difference in just being a little bit more comfortable with someone like Gino over there. You know, Met trying to focus on making sure that the wave is in the correct spot and that he's playing right with Snoopy. Maybe that the comms aren't quite there, that Leon's on the early rotation. Maybe it is. Maybe the comms are there, and Mask and Baskin just don't give it enough respect. But either way, Leon ends up with another key assist early on.
He's been playing well. It was Yamoja in Game 1, Kabrakan here in Game 2, who's rather different, much more reliant on these stuns and the walls to try and trap down these immobile characters that are relying on dashes, not leaps. You know, the hope is that maybe he can lock in Mast, I'd be thinking, and force him to use another option to escape, perhaps Meerkat as well. So we'll keep an eye on Leon and his target selection and where he chooses to go and who his targets are, because he's going to really need to make this Kabrakan look good, I'm thinking, here in this game to keep up with some of the Guardian value that's on the other side on this other team. Average Joes are reliant, I think, on this damage, on bursting down their early targets, and then trying to use the numbers advantage after.
Right. Because the dive is so good from the Hoofs, average Joes have got to find a way to shut that down. And one of the easiest ways to do so is immediately remove one of the dive options from the equation. I mean, dive usually works really well because you overwhelm the enemy backline with numbers. But when that doesn't happen, it feels a lot worse.
Wow, I'm just noticing a trend. Wherever the average Joes go, there's way more of them than there are of the Hoofs. A 3-man gank to solo. And I don't even know if we can put that on Meerkat. I don't know how he's getting away. The bad news is for him, his first relic selection, Beads, in solo lane is down now, so he's just that much more vulnerable. They don't quite have the damage chase Mask underneath this tier 1. But that's a big blow over here to the Soul Lane. It's not a blink, it's not a teleport back in, it's just beads, and they didn't even get him much value.
No, they didn't. I guess he's got to beads that initial pushback from Uzi.
Yep.
Looks like Uzi got himself in a good position. That's no surprise that Uzi knows how to make that work with that Nike over there. As you said, not a pick we see a ton of, but for Uzi, you see a ton of it if you're tuning into his late night streams. He loves this god and is very, very comfortable on it. It's a good bait in from Snoopy. Just baits Griff the dash immediately. Mask ready, and that's the like instant right away back in. But look at this, Griff's coming back in on the Snoopy.
Yeah, it makes sense, and they get the kill in right onto Meerkat, knowing he didn't have the bead, so Bat out of Hell. Not going to be used aggressively. Only one swoop was used to stay down, and Baskin was able to get the kill onto Leon, rotates over to right. Now Uzi in danger of falling as well, as already, or doesn't have the Sentinel of Zeus back up, gets caught in the portal, and that's going to be too much damage for young Uzi to take eventually, you'd think, but Uzi's still alive. Met Yankee just diving, Turn of Fate does not connect, and Uzi managed to survive, and now in comes Baroneri looking for some cleanup kills, and boy are there kills to clean up. Thunder Crash used aggressively, Tycho drums to clean up the kill, taunts Met Yankee back in, and thank you very much. 2 more kills going the way of Average Joe's.
Very similar to last game, isn't it? I mean, it's just sticking around too long, trying to do too much, expecting the enemy team to not be coordinated enough to punish you. And the Joes just are. Perfect rotation in from Baroneri. That's free kills. I mean, no, Baskin was completely from the minute that Uzi jumped away. That should have been it. You just don't have the damage to do it. And then I guess the portal was close. Okay, now we got to back up. We got to assume that Baroneri's not just sitting on his hands and doing nothing. Ends up not being the case, and they stick around too long and get an easy couple kills back the way of Average Joe's.
And throughout the middle of all that, Baskin was able to find the very first kill of the game for the Hoofs. He put down Leon to at least get them on the board, but on the board not nearly the same as caught up, and Average Joe is already out to a bit of an early lead. Looks like about 600, 700 or so gold. Nothing crazy even at this point in the game, but they're the ones kind of dictating the pace. They're the ones with the rotations. They're the ones showing up at the numbers advantage and putting pressure onto the Hoofs to respond, and that's with Athena ult and Chernobog ult. You'd think it'd be hard for Average Joe's to ever outnumber a composition like this, but they keep doing it.
Well, a lot of those were pre-level 5. So now that we saw Mask already jump in with that Defender of Olympus, Baskin got over to the right lane. Just a very split-up fight, which is, again, a good way to attack a team with this many globals and this much mobility, is don't let them all come into one area. You know, you got to make them make a choice. As soon as Mask commits to that left side fight, Average Joes know they can go in more aggressively on Meerkat on the right, who has struggled in this matchup. I don't think he's dead, but he's in trouble.
Yeah, were it not for Defender of Olympus, I think he would be, but Masked all over it. Uses that ultimate, gets there in time, and Meerkat does manage to survive. Have we given Meerkat enough credit for swapping back over here to solo? He was mid for a long time with this roster, so Baskin could play solo. Here he is making the adjustment back up against guys who do it all the time, and he's been holding his own for the most part. Sometimes I think we do see him get caught out, maybe some spots where some vets over there wouldn't, but I think for the most part he's looked good.
Yeah, he's played mid for basically this roster. He played ADC last year, I think, for this roster, and now he's back over there in the solo lane for the first time in a while, and thought he had a fairly rough game 1, you know, not off to his best start here, 0-2, but certainly under a lot of pressure. And this Average Joe's team, I mean, Leon's always liked to play around the solo lane, wants to get a guy like Uzi ahead, and Uzi on one of these comfort picks as well. So we'll see how Meerkat's able to team fight on this Tsukiyomi, because that's where I think this pick is going to get its most value by far. Is not really in the laning phase, but in those 5-on-5s.
Exactly, when he's able to create another diver for this comp, as if they somehow need more. Well, that will certainly be the role here for Meerkat in these team fights, using that piercing moonlight effectively. And making sure you understand where you're going to be landing in the team fight, how you're using that last shot in particular, whatever is your last shot, to kind of control your positioning. As they get aggressive, Leon and Baroneri both move in. Portal does get Baskin out, but his poor support does not have that same option. In fact, Baskin nearly gets the kill in the Baroneri and sets up for Snoopy to come back in. No longer a favorable trade mid for support. And Ishtal in trouble. Now these globals starting to show up. No way that Average Joe's can catch him off guard when they've got ultimates like this.
Exactly what this composition is designed to do. You can get in on us, but first of all inning onto the Giannis feels like a bad plan from the start. But they go on Giannis, bait his beads. Okay, not too bad. Now let's turn on the Ganesh, but we've got Chernobog coming in. We got Athena coming in. That was without Mask using the ultimate. If he had used Defender of Olympus, Met Yankee might have just lived because he baited for a long time, got a really good shell off in the midst of that fight, and ended up still getting a lot of his damage off at the same time. So well played by the Herculean Hoofs. That was the first moment they've looked like a team so far during this set. They worked much better as a unit.
I think Baskin had some good self-awareness there. He was able to come back in on the back of that portal escape, get a critical unstable vortex. I think it was Ishtau he put down into that critical threshold with it and set up for Snoopy to come in and clean up that kill. So good work from the Hoofs. They brought this game back into their own favor now. Now they're up 1,000 gold or so, and they can start to be the pace setters. They've done a good job, I think, kind of regaining control by counter-engaging, but I wonder if this team wouldn't be better suited once they maybe get a couple more items online or even get a second relic for Baskin. With being the aggressors, man, using their ability to rotate around the map to make it hard for Average Joes to group up the way they clearly would like to.
I think that I agree that their composition lends itself to that, but you look at the way this team played for a lot of last year, they seem pretty content to be willing to go late and just go for the team fights and think that, you know, their experience and their mechanics would carry them in that moment. It's been less successful so far. I mean, both these teams sitting at 0-2 means that, you know, that it clearly hasn't worked out, so maybe turning on the Jets a little bit earlier, being a little bit more proactive around the map is the call, but something tells me that the Hoofs are going to sit around and wait for the full team fight stage to start, because that's where they usually end up being their strongest.
Their comfort zone, so to speak, and they've got the tools to do it. I mean, it's been working for them to just kind of respond to Average Joe's aggression in those last couple of fights that we've seen happen, especially the one in mid. But now the Hoofs are looking for some aggression. An invade comes out, and Ishtau takes a ton of damage on the back of the poke, but I think that Joe still managed to defend the buff with that last bit of damage there from Baronary. But that's not deterring the Hoofs. They're still getting aggressive. Now they know where Griff is, though, so they'll bring this trap a little further down. See if they can find out. But they're right on the ward. I doubt Griff going to walk into this one.
No, Griff's safe and sound underneath that tower. At least he hopes so. But with this much tank potential between the Athena, even though she's full damage, I mean, still has Guardian base stats. The Ganesh can help tank. Shell's up and ready to go. That was a dive opportunity. I think Griff, if he had sensed it coming, would have just started to ult right away. Still ends up being a purple steal, it looks like, for the Hoofs. They just decide to leave it on the ground because Snoopy's own is coming up. No reason to overextend to pick it up. But at least getting something on the back end of that invade. No, did Griff steal it? Wow. All right, fair enough. So they go 0 for 2 on the buffs on the left side of the map. But it feels like they probably should have gone 2 for 2 with how much pressure they had.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, that's not maybe their traditional playstyle to get aggressive here. I like it with this comp, but didn't quite pan out for them there in that spot. So I wonder if we'll see them look for it again if they feel like they can get to those buffs a little bit sooner, put some pressure on them and force the Joes to respond as Ishtau gets aggressive. Basket escapes just by moving to the portal, but right there waiting for him is Leon. But can Leon make it back out to save his own life? The answer is no. Support for mid, likely always going to be a good trade, though, and putting pressure into Baskin, good strategy here for the Joes.
Just love that play by Leon. Never once thought about going into the jungle, because he knows that's not the way Baskin's running. He's going to go underneath that tower, ready to go with that blink in, lock him in with the cage, and as you said, mid for support, always a good trade for the team that took down the enemy mid laner. So Baskin's coming up, still has both his relics up, has his ultimate ready to go. He can join this fight quickly. Certainly not the end of the world for Hoofs.
Here the Hoofs getting aggressive again. Baronary has already used the Aegis and the Purification Beads. Both were a moot point, as he didn't have much chance surviving that. Red buff dropped down too, but Ozzy has made his way into the fray. Drops down the Sentinel of Zeus for the slows, but doesn't have the follow-up. Ishtown is dueling Meerkat to the right side of the battle, and he is winning, but he misses the first bat out of hell. Shell comes out too. Meerkat still plenty healthy in terms of getting out, and Ozzy now overcommitted, falls in a 2 for 0. The Hoofs turn that fight around by making it kind of hectic.
Just not the right opportunity to use that Aegis there for Baronary.
Agreed.
Tsukiyomi feels really, really strong, right? And he certainly is. He's a super strong god. But when you're playing at this type of level, you can't just get hit by getting walked at piercing Moonlight. If you press Aegis right away, all 4 shots get immune, and he never teleports. It takes 0 damage throughout, and it just feels like that it's a reaction check there by Meerkat, and Baronary failed it, and as a result, it opens up the whole fight for the Hoofs. It allows Meerkat to get in. Even if he Aegises the damage from the piercing Moonlight, it doesn't matter because now Meerkat's on top of you, and he's going to be able to make it work alongside Met Yankee, who, again, a good shell by Met ends up keeping Meerkat alive.
And Uzi trying to find his spots in this team fight, but it feels like he's kind of the only one that can step up at this point with that Sentinel of Zeus on top of him, making him so unkillable. Even as the Sledge, which is not a particularly popular item in more kind of dominated Season 7, but I mean, it still has all that health and power, and the Ankile right behind it still provides the survivability. Just not quite enough for Uzi when he's got to be that solo agent. Ishtal wasn't able to complete that kill on the Meerkat either. I think even if he finds the right hit, that shell's there to provide the support. So now Average Joe's in a real tough spot. They're down about 2,000 gold or so. The experience is starting to become a real problem as well, as both of the backliners on the Hoofs have a 2-level advantage. It's 4,000 experience, 1,800 gold. And really, Average Joe's game plan doesn't seem to be getting a whole lot better, does it? Against this Herculean Hoofs draft, when they can afford to just get aggressive and walk at you, as Ishtal narrowly avoids trouble.
Exactly. I mean, normally in this sort of position, you'd look and go, okay, we have the Apollo. We're a little bit behind. Not by much, but a little bit behind. Let's just try and use our Apollo ult to create a man advantage on a fight and win the fight that way. But Snoopy also has a global ultimate. And then Mask has a global ultimate. And then Basket can get there faster than Baronary. So normally the comeback potential is built in on this global ult, but because Hoofs just outnumber you in that regard, it makes it a lot harder to execute that.
Yeah, Leon is done for. Portal damage will do it, but Snoopy gets the last bit. Baskin makes it out thanks to Defender of Olympus. That is his ultimate on cooldown, but he holds on to the relic, so still not bad. Griff, not much chance you could dunk in there, buddy, but I know he'd have liked to. I can't believe the Hoofs stuck with Baskin. They gave up on the fight, stayed with him, and made sure Griff didn't have that opportunity to dive in for a free kill.
Yeah, it's not like he had a huge shutdown either, but look at this. Blink in from Mask. Meerkat going to find a good value on that ultimate. Uzi's shield, gone. Sundered off of him right away, and Meerkat's able to cut him down.
Yeah, I was like, did he Sentinel of Zeus at all? But Sunder has that value, and he is punished on the back of it. Mid-tier 1 down, and it's starting to feel really tough for the Joes here now because their main strategy or game plan here for this game just isn't available yet. Make sure you actually take care of it there, Griff, then get the back off. Even when they were able to get that all-in commitment onto Baskin, with Defender of Olympus, with that through space and time, they couldn't commit enough for the kill, as now Griff takes a heads-up battle up against Snoopy. He'll take that trade every time, drops the Mezins of damage, but no further follow-up from that. This is going to be a tough one for the Joes to get back into, man. Their composition kind of broken up a bit with Herculean Hoofs, I think, responding with a good draft kind of from the get-go and kind of boxing the Joes in.
Isn't it so weird how every time a team gets Athena, we go, yeah, we like this draft a lot. Like, this is good. They should do this more. That tells me that Athena probably shouldn't be getting through because she just feels like she might be too good at this level right now, man. I mean, the thing is, I think that once SPL play starts, someone is going to first pick Athena, and some other team is going to be super ready for it, and come in with a draft that's designed to beat Athena, and they're going to embarrass her at that party, just like they said they would. And it's going to make everyone will go, oh, right, that's how we're supposed to play against Athena. Like, that's the way we're supposed to counteract this. So maybe she's going to get worse just by players playing against her more often. But to me, I mean, these players have played against this version of Athena for weeks now. These are all good players. I think that they should be playing around it better, but if that keeps happening and they keep not playing around it better, then maybe it's not the players, maybe it's the god. And that's kind of where I'm at in the Athena discussion right now.
I mean, there's a real chance both teams look like how the Hoofs look right now when they had it. The Average Joes looked not unbeatable in that game 1, and now do the Hoofs. So I'm right there with you, man. It just feels like this pick's strong right now until we can see what these teams can do to find a way to get around it. It might just be Banner. I'm a big fan of that for now, of that game plan, but there might also be some ways you can make sure that your team has a response. So the Hoofs in a great spot, still not so far ahead in gold that this game's unwinnable for the Joes. It's experience that's looking like the backbreaker here. 3 levels behind for Baroneri, 2 for the support, and then 1 for Meerkat, who struggled at the start of this game, but has since rebounded well. This next Fury fight is a big one for the Hoofs. If they can get this one and some picks, they'll really cement that lead.
And theoretically, this is where their composition's at the weakest, because they're all grouped. They're not going to be using those globals effectively.
Leon moves in first again, but he's just not tanky enough for that. Too much damage taken, and Mast cleans up the kill. Yankee drops down those Dharmic Pillars. That does box in Uzi, who is unable to find any more value there. In fact, falls to the damage from Snoopy as Griff takes a ride right on out of here, calls his Uber, and hops into the chariot so that my man can leave. Baroneri in trouble on the left side of the fight as well. He'll use his ultimate to create some space and escape. But the Joes just are getting baxed out of all these contests. Snoopy gets it done with a camp. Mask gets it done underneath the tier 2 tower. And suddenly Ishtal, the only one standing, might get the kill on a Snoopy, but too much help from Meerkat.
Yeah, these engages from Leon, I mean, I love them on the Emoja. I haven't loved him so much on this Gabrak.
Nope.
At least in these 5-on-5 moments. I mean, he is definitely biting off a little bit too much. And against coordinated backlines, you just can't afford to go in solo. You've got to have Uzi there with you in order to try and help. You've got to get some more backup. It's just been too uncoordinated in this game for the average Joes. And I think the main difference to me is the ability to insta-kill this support upon their engage. Yamoja, those engages are ranged, right? He's throwing up the walls, and then he's putting the Riptides at max range. Kabrakan, you've got to be right on top of them in order for the engage to start, and it's been too easy for the Hoofs to immediately turn and burn onto this Kabrakan.
Leon has struggled to get this party started for the average Joes, but how much can we blame the pilot on this one when I think they might have come into this one at a deficit when it comes to their tools? Just struggling to find any kind of avenue in. He has that Relic Dagger to set up for maybe these Blink engages being a bit stronger, but that has not materialized for them yet. And the Hoofs play this so cleanly on the back of that fight. They go right to the Fire Giant, even though they fought over the Fury. Then they go clean up the Fury second, and now they're in a position to start their siege, to start their conquest, moving onto the other side of the map. And as I said for the Joes in Game 1, there's a ton of towers up for the Hoofs here in Game number 2. The lead that has already gotten pretty much out of control is about to get a whole lot worse for the Joes. And it might just be a matter of can the Joes find the Hoofs making some kind of mistake to capitalize on, because they continue to play like this. It might just require that.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the upgrades coming through for the Hoofs on starter items and that kind of stuff, whereas the Joes, I mean, level 16 for Baroneri, level 13 for El Leon. It's not like Leon's job is getting easier on getting in there and starting these fights off. He's only going to start eating more and more damage as this game goes on.
The tier 2 towers, the early siege, met Yankee, Baskin, and the boys over in left will be Meerkat and Mass, the M crew, M&M, here in mid. Yeah, that's an excellent nickname for them. That'll certainly stick as Uzi TPs into the left side. Phoenix, yeah, it's perfect. But they don't even commit to that one. They get that teleport out from Uzi relatively free, and they just move on over to the mid-tier 2 and threaten there. The right side is not pushed up. It'll be a bit harder for them to step over to that, but I don't even know how concerned they are with it. This mid and left Phoenix are looking like excellent targets for them here in the short term, but maybe they do want to go take care of right and get that pushed up. That seems to be where the boys are heading. And even without the wave, they should be able to just brute force down these towers without any resistance from the Joes.
Yeah, I mean, a minute 30 left on Fire. You're already sitting at a 10K lead. Do you want to try and end the game now? I'm in the favor of probably yes. The only awkward part is that Mass just now hit 20. So he's just now got Bumba's Dagger available, or Bumba's Hammer, excuse me, available to him. Met Yankee didn't end up buying the Sentinel's Embrace, even though he left base at 17, I think. So he needs to go back and upgrade that starter. Now, with you've only got a minute left on this Fire Giant. It basically took you about 40 seconds to clear out these towers on the right-hand side. That's a wave and a half or so of time wasted. We'll see how many waves it takes them here in order to crack the base. But without Enhanced Fire, and with I just don't think that Snoopy's going to be able to burn down these Phoenixes as quickly as they would have liked.
So Dishtao in mid, defending those waves, pushing up the rest of the Joes in right. In fact, Dishtao comes to join the squad. Met Yankee steps up to try and set up the team. Snoopy takes some shots, but the Phoenix still relatively healthy for now. But the Hoofs still positioning like they want to contest this base. Ishtal, Mass moves in, taunts Ishtal. Can't find much more in the back of it, but his damage is tough. But Ishtal's healing pretty good too, as he stays quite healthy, but these Phoenixes are still getting tough to siege. They've only got 10 seconds left on the actual Fire Giant buff itself. So Met Yankee drops down the Dharmic Pillars, looks for an engage. Leon caught out in the portal, forced to use his beads just to stay alive, and Meerkat in the back, looking way too tanky for the average Joe to deal with. That is the right side Phoenix down. Baskin has found himself a double kill as well, and there's no need for them to slow down now. They might be able to just go ahead and put this game to bed. Meerkat finds Uzi. Ishtal inside the silence, unstable vortex, hits hard too. They taunt back in. Griff even catch out Ishtal inside the portal, and though he is still alive, what can he do in the 5v1 with the Titan already down to half health? They'll even look for the kill a little bit before eventually coming back to the Titan and taking care of game number 2.
Yeah, I've seen enough, Finch. Athena's too good. Unless you're in first pick position, you should be banning it, because otherwise you're going to make the game a lot harder for yourself than it really needs to be. It's not just the Athena, of course, for the Hoofs that game. They played much better together as a unit. They were able to get a little bit of a lead, and still this team has that experience to be able to close out games. When you give them an inch, they're really good at taking that mile. It's more about how they get these leads and how consistently they're able to get them and then stay together as a unit in order to make them work. I'm interested to see what's going to happen in Picks and Bans game number 3. I'd imagine that the average Joes are going to take first overall, and I'd anticipate and hope for, if you're a Hoofs fan, an Athena ban.
I would think so too. A great performance from the Hoofs to push us into a game number 3. We'll have that conclusion for you on the other side of this break.
Officially tied up at 1 here. Game 3 on the horizon. 1 win for the team with the Athena and the other team without, and then 1 win for the other team with the Athena and the other team without. I think you're getting my point there, Gormizer. Athena has been the talk of the town here in this set, and regardless of not regardless, but whoever is first pick, I'm sure you're going to want her on your side. And the second pick team, you're hoping that they take her away, but continues to be the storyline here, continues to take these games over.
I mean, last week, again, literally last week, it was just about Apollo. I remember having this conversation saying, man, Team 1 had Apollo, they won. Team 2 then got Apollo, and they won. Then Team 1, guess what? Got Apollo back and ended up winning in some of those 3-game sets in Europe last week. So it makes sense that that has just shifted to another god with the same, if not maybe more, impact because of those taunts. I think there was a lot in this game. Again, the follow-up that comes behind those is very important. I think you get Baskin on one of, I would say, signature gods right here on this Yanis. Maybe not something you're used to seeing if you only know Baskin from the solo lane, but something that you should be used to seeing pretty much otherwise. And moments like that, so you don't get to see that too often, but Defender of Olympus having damage mitigation on it, again, doesn't come up in conversation a whole lot, but saving plays like that, I think Mask was just in the right area. Throwing this Athena into the jungle was a really good play, and I'm going to give shout-outs to my boy Ganesh, because like you said when we came into this, Ganesh is just really good, and I think there were a lot of moments where Met Yankee was able to make the plays that the team needed. Again, something that they really need, not just with Gino, but also playing today with the sub, having Met Yankee there. All of those are very important for them, and I think they just click together as that mid 3v3.
Hey, hats off to the Jithans for snagging that one. Baskin 5, 2, and 7.
Oh, also Snoopy.
On the Giannis out of the mid lane. Yeah, Snoopy 609. Literally everyone I think you should give a shout out to here on the Hoofs team. And it's games like that, right, where I think that's why we kind of hark on why is this team not like winning, right? I mean, why haven't they won yet? Because they can play like that. They have the name recognition and the potential to play at a level like we saw here in game number 2. 10,000 damage for Mast out of the jungle on the Athena. 5K for Meerkat there out of the solo lane. Tsukiyomi, interesting enough to see. But I think that goes to show there's still some flexibility with picks like that. Athena kind of forces flex from everywhere else. If you feel her in one matchup, you can swap someone here, there, wherever it might be. So I'm liking what I'm seeing now out of the Herculean Hoofs. So we go down to a final game 3 here, Gore, to decide which one of these teams is going to snag their first win in the North American SCC. Is there any other name or any other god to look out for other than this Athena and picks and bans?
I think the Scylla, depending on if she comes back, is going to be a big one. Obviously, if Tiamat makes it through, she's going to be the talk of the town. But Scylla was the first ban from the Herculean Hoofs in game number 2 there, and it was very crucial, I think, for the average Joes in game number 1. That being said, I don't think she was the end-all, be-all. I don't think you have to ban her away. There's a lot of shuffles to be made. I think these global ults are going to be coming through. I think if your second ban here, or second pick here, you have to ban the Athena just to make sure the other team doesn't grab it.
Yep, absolutely agreed here, Gore. Let's see what the strategy is around the Athena, around the Scylla, around the global pressure and picks and bans for the third and final game of the set and the third and final game of the day. We'll get ourselves a winner here in just not a few minutes. Hopefully that'd be the quickest game in Smite history. In just 30 minutes or so, we'll have a winner here.
That'd be hard to beat.
In our last set of the game. It would, right? Okay, so there's like the match of the day
game in Smite history is technically 2 minutes.
Is that no? I don't believe. Oh,
no, I'm not kidding. There was an F6 2 minutes into a game. It is a very bad game. Everyone wants to forget it, but it did happen.
Got it. That did exist.
And it was technically in the SBL, so it has to count. It's somewhere out there.
The match of the day game mode where everyone gets like 50,000 gold to start off with, and you're like all super powerful right off the bat, and if you group up as a team as 5 and you just run down the mid, because you're like one-shotting towers with all the items you have, because they're all level 1
You come through, everyone locks in like Guan Yu, Chang'e, right. They just run it down mid.
But Conquest, a 3-minute game would be unheard of outside of an F6. I literally don't think it's possible, but I'm happy to be proven wrong otherwise. We'll catch back up here with the picks and bans that are happening. Giannis, Morgan, Tiamat taken away. Athena, not even playing around with it, not even leaving it to the third and final ban. The Hoofs are going to take Athena off the table there. I think that makes some sense. Scylla, still available. That was a name that we figured would fall somewhere into those ban columns. Is it first pick worthy, though? Well, maybe, but not for the average Joes here in game number 3. Instead, Gormizer, the Sobek will come out first.
Honestly, I think this is a good... Think of... I guess in a way, like, this is a bad comparison, but think of Pluck as a pseudo-taunt, right? Like, it does kind of the same concept where I'm going to get you into this fight, whether you want to be in there or not, right? And so taunt is so powerful because you can hit 3 or 4 people. It's a nice wide cone. Sobek displaces you entirely, though, but not only does he do that, he puts himself between you and your team, and that's where I think this strength comes from. We saw what Tricksnake was doing with this pick earlier today, and so I think this is something that can absolutely, almost on its own, impact impact the exchange and the outcome of a game. I think compared and combined with things like the Scylla and knowing that you don't have too much against you, I mean, a Ymir, again, against him to be able to either block him off from his team, block off where the pluck goes, or block off the pluck to begin with is a good counter. But Average Joe's, like, this is a knockout top 3 to start a game with.
I think the Joes had to pick Apollo there as well. I think if Apollo goes through to potentially get banned out, I think that's an easy ban for the Hoofs there. So the fact that the Joes have gotten a decent bit of initiation, as well as both backliners locked in here, they're probably feeling pretty good about where they stand. Khepri has been an answer to some of this heavy engaged delete you style composition. Obviously the Scarab's Blessing helpful with that. Abduct, absolutely a very strong ability there. Does Khepri make some sense here, Gore? Obviously, we don't have the full picture yet for the Herculean Hoofs, but do you think it's a good kind of placeholder for the rest of this comp to build around?
I mean, I love Khepri, and I love what he can bring to a fight. He is not someone, in my mind, that really takes precedent. Like, it feels, again, it kind of feels mean. I don't know why I feel mean. Khepri, you're in a video game. I don't have to worry about hurting your feelings. But at the same time, yeah, there's so many other picks and other Guardians that would get banned away that I think you scoop up something that is more important to your team there. I would honestly like, depending on where Tsukiyomi and Chernobog are going, like I can't imagine them flexing that into mid, or maybe they are and they're throwing, you know, the wool over our eyes or whatever. But I think that this is a spot that would be solid for a mage. You get somebody that's good counter to Scylla, and you leave yourself open for maybe a good counter pick over there in the duo lane. Or it could be going the other route where they're playing the waiting game and trying to conceal what they're planning on locking in here, which is another fun way to do it. You do get at least one counter pick down there, and so knowing that you have something like the Tsukiyomi, who we've seen flexed into solo, flexed into mid, we've technically seen, look, Benny Q's not playing today, but I will give him the credit. He's flexed it over there into the duo lane. Like, the fact that you can have Tsukiyomi pretty much anywhere across the map means that this last pick is still very important for the Herculean Hoofs.
A couple picks with 1 game and 1 win under their belt locked in now. Erlong, Shen, Osiris both fall into that category. In Gore, we actually touched on this a little bit on the previous death segment. If you can't pick the Athena, I suppose you still have the Erlong Shen. Obviously, what makes Athena so strong is you just kind of do it on cooldown as one of your regular abilities. But if you're really valuing that taunt and the ability to heal off of that and then potentially shred a target depending on how you build off of that taunt, Erlong Shen's a perfect pick.
Dave, I'm trying to think of a team that's just going to hit harder and feel worse to play against than Average Joe's lineup right now. I mean, Sobek, Scylla, Apollo, Erlong, Cthulhu.
What about a Nox?
You don't have really a whole ton to come through. Look, this must... Look, if you're going to not pick your mage and instead lock something in like Khepri, I guess this is why, right? Like I said, maybe they're trying to conceal something. They wanted to hide it from me. Look, I don't know what this Nox is going to do. I've seen her win more games as a support than I've seen her win as a mid laner. So that says something, I think, about her. I'm excited to see it, but look, you're going up against one of the most stacked teams. I think that silence is going to come in handy, but there's so much good on Average Joe's here that the Herculean Hoofs, like, they've got a very tall mountain to climb, and the game hasn't even started yet.
Are you concerned about the Hoofs and their ability to get into the backline, onto the Scylla? You're going to have to work through a Sobek and through a Cthulhu as well. Who do you think jumps on the Scylla? Who do you think gets this burst mage off the board?
I mean, I think like Osiris Tsukiyomi can get back there, but
that's true.
I mean, Tsukiyomi, again, one of the things that's good about Tsukiyomi is that he likes to fight at a range, right? So maybe he can find a way to get to Scylla without always having to deep dive in there, but he does still need to get back there pretty consistently, and if his ult's not up, then he's not going to be able to do so. Osiris, maybe that's where the onus falls onto him, but if Scylla and Apollo turn their eyes onto a lonely Osiris, he's dead. He's like, I don't care how tanky, I don't care what stage of the game you're in, if she has something like an Obsidian Shard and you're full build, you're going to get shredded down. So I think there's a little inconsistency, like you said, trying to get to that back line and deal with them. And even if you get back there, I mean, good luck staying back there. Sobek, Erlong, and Cthulhu, like, the peel on Average Joe's should be really solid. As long as they can make themselves play as a full 5-man team and, like, you can feel the fluidity of their playstyle, I don't see many reasons Average Joe's should fall apart. Unless I'm absolutely underestimating Nox, I'm going off of past history of her. She's not necessarily always been that good, but you never know. Maybe Season 8 is the season for Nox, dude.
Look, I know there's some Nox fans out there that are loving seeing this pick locked in here. One final time, Game 3, Average Joe's Herculean Hoofs. Let's kick it off.
Thank you, Dave and Gore on the desk once again. Still fits an aggro here as we move into this game number 3. And I was wondering, with Meerkat having played Tsukuyomi all set long, if he would take it over to solo yet again, and he does. It's masked on this Osiris solo, and we knew Basket would be taking on this Nox, but aggro, is that going to be enough for them to stop what is undoubtedly a good draft over here from Average Joe's?
I don't know, man. I mean, Nox... I'm a believer in Nox. I think the kit inherently is really, really powerful. It's just hard to execute on. Normally, I'm a big fan of Nox with setup gods, and Khepri is more setup than people give him credit for, so I like that combination together. Don't love it in combination with the Osiris. I think I'd want some hard CC in the jungle, something like a Thor maybe or something like that. Here's my main concern. I don't know what Nox is ever supposed to do about Cthulhu. Ever.
Yes.
Like, in Cthulhu's ultimate, Nox is worthless against him. She doesn't do anything to him. The best you can do is ult him for the damage reduction, and that doesn't feel particularly powerful to me. You can run away effectively because you can shadow step into somebody and hide in there. So that's good, I guess, but not to kill the Cthulhu, just to exclusively not die.
Meerkat falls for first blood. Ishtao picks up the Mannequin Scepter as his starter item that's known for being aggressive early, but falling off relatively quickly. Not going to be able to keep up what a Bumba's hammer can do in the late game, certainly, but if Ishtao can do more of that, get some great kills in the early, the Mannequins will have its value.
Definitely, and you can end up upgrading this later on. I've seen some players advocating for selling the Mannequins upgrade, or just not upgrading it at all, just selling it later on whenever you're done with your needs for it. I think it's probably worth upgrading, but either way, it's just strong early game. It gives you a lot of kill potential. It helps your clear significantly. Eye of the Jungle is really good, but I'm a fan of the Mannequins on gods like Erlong.
Snoopy allows himself to be plucked, but I think the Mez interrupted his dash a little too nonchalant. There were the Herculean Hoofs duo lane as Leon and Griff do a great job of responding. And Griff, man, I know last game wasn't his best game, but I think these Hunters are kind of going how the team goes. It's really hard to call this early still, but Snoopy and Griff have looked much better when their team looks better. And Griff doing a great job getting off to a good start here in duo.
Yeah, just a really odd decision there by Snoopy. I mean,
yeah,
it couldn't have been a surprise what the game plan was there. And now Met Yankee on the receiving end. He has to use the shell, but smartly holds his dash. But Met didn't have the option of using purification beads, or maybe just dashing into the wall ahead of time. Like, there were plenty of options there for Snoopy besides stand there, get plucked, and die, but that's the one he chose, I suppose. So Average Joe's off to a very, very good start in this one.
Yeah, I felt like he took a really relaxed approach. His Average Joe went an early purple invade. Not able to get it, but with Ishtao showing up, perhaps they can find some picks. It's not there. Still head right back to this purple invade. A great way to try and find some early leads over here on the left side of the map is to strip away some of this farm. And we know you got to get Ishtao involved early and often with this start that he's gone for, so that's a great way to do it. Just by putting a little bit of pressure here on Snoopy and Met Yankee, you already have that fall once for the ADC.
Yeah, might as well. I mean, when you can give Griff a lead, I think that he's going to be able to make it work. He certainly has shown that so far in this set. But excited to see what Snoopy's going to be able to bring on this Chernobog. Now, just a matter of if he can stay even enough to actually be worthwhile on these rotations. It's one of the dangers when you fall behind on these global ultimate gods. You already don't have a lot of kill potential in lane because you don't have an ultimate that's going to just deal damage to the enemy god. You're not an Anhur or an Artemis or something like that has that sort of potential. And then you have to make it, every time you use one of those ultimates, it's a choice of how much farm am I willing to give up. Well, if I'm already behind, I want to give up even less farm. And then when I get there, I'm less effective because I don't have as much farm already. So in my mind, I think falling behind on gods like Chernobog and Apollo feels even worse than on gods like Cupid or Anhur or something like that, because at least you're going to have that potential to bring the fight whenever the fight's around you. The whole reason you're picking the god ends up kind of going out the window whenever you're in that sort of situation.
We have a pause here at this point in the game, so we'll work on getting it sorted out for you, getting these players back into the action. But I think you make a good point, man. It can feel difficult in that dual lane when you don't have that additional tool to fight back with, and you can't use the tool how it was meant to kind of move around the map because you're so far behind already that your impact may be a bit negligible once you make it towards that other part of the map. But this is a good start from the Joes, man. They've had the early game down. For me, it's a question of what can they do in these next couple of minutes, because if the Herculean Hoofs are getting back into it, that's where they've done it, right? It's been by responding in these, first minutes right after that real hyper early game and kind of bringing the game back onto their side.
And they've got the potential to do so. I mean, Nox is one of those characters that snowballs leads really effectively because every combo kills once she gets ahead, and that is really hard to deal with. Ishtao has Blink, no beads. That means he should die to any combo from Baskin that he ever lands, and there's no CC immunity for Erlong. I actually think of Erlong as one of the gods I want to see when I'm picking Nox, because you can cancel out his main form of damage, and that's something you do transformations. You've got multiple ways to get him off of you with your root and your dash, and your ultimate allows you to trade more effectively against him. So I'm happy if I'm in Baskin's shoes to see that Ishtao not only picked Erlong, but also has no purification beads, but you have got to kill him pre-12. At least once, ideally 2 or 3 times, in order to make this Nox pick get ahead and get to that strong point.
I kind of like it, though. Ishtao has gone all in on this part of the game, hasn't he? On this early game and his ability to put pressure, and they've decided on duo. It's a bit of a surprise. We've seen a lot of focus towards mid and solo in this set so far, but when Leon and Griff get out to a great start, bring Ishtao on over here, make life even harder on Snoopy, get that farm going around, and maybe even see if he can catch out Baskin, who stepped into the jungle. But they're considering going for a very early Scorpion. We see this usually happen around the 12-minute mark, but enhance these buffs, man. Get every bit of farm you can, because you're the ones dominating the map right now.
I mean, this is the best opportunity now for you to leverage this Erlong in that aggressiveness. Like you were saying, he's built aggressively. He's going all in on it. This is where you can already start to cash out, but you want to make sure that you're going in numbers like they are right away.
Good silence. That means Leon is pulled in. Nine's Turn's Blessing dropped, but on the Met Yankee as Baronary and Leon both low. In comes Snoopy using that global ultimate. Leon finds the heal, but cannot escape. He will be the first casualty of war, but in comes Griff. I'm a Monster connects, and there's a couple low members here for the average Joes to try and clean up, but it's Baskin and the boys that continue to get it done. So Griff finding a 2-man mez. The crush there as well as Baronary gets the fadeaway shot onto Mast, and they're going to need Uzi to do some work here now to bring this back in their favor. They're using the shells, doing everything they can to stay alive, but can Uzi keep up the chase? Doesn't have another knockup available. There it is, but still not enough damage for him to get in there, and now he might be stuck. Dashes back into the silence and guaranteed dead.
Really beautiful Rising Dawn from Met Yankee. Met's kind of playing nuts so far here, just subbing in for Gino. I mean, he looked really, really good in Game 2 in particular. And now right there, I mean, the well-timed ultimate onto Meerkat, the shell was on time, and then that Rising Dawn damage mitigation, even however small it is without a whole lot of points in it, I think might have been the difference maker there in keeping Meerkat alive. So overall, a fairly good fight, all things considered, for the Hoofs, because Baskin's ultimate split the uprights, didn't find a home. And that ultimate is a huge part of why Nox is good, is now he's in a bad spot. Dash does come up in time, but see the damage output that Erlong can have in a short amount of time.
But it is already behind Mass now. This is the strategy if you're the Hoofs, is to kind of weather the storm. I've got to think of this early game as Snoopy has his beads forced out. Good work by Leon to get those out, and Snoopy's correct. My man is plucked back into danger if he stays masked with the up-down. An absolute animal, but I'm a Monster off the mark, and Mass somehow still alive. Leon trying to get a little bit closer, but stuck inside the Nox silence, the root, so they'll settle in quotes for Met Yankee. Leon cannot keep up the chase, a 1-for-0 in favor of the Joes, but they're too low to try and get a whole lot else on the backside. But then Snoopy wants to come in, a risky call, but he had Baskin with him. He'd used the taxi to bring along one more. Not quite enough, though, for Baskin to find any more damage, but I sure love that strat.
I love it, too. I was worried that it was going to catch the average Joes off guard. I think that Snoopy just ends up a little bit too far from Baroneri, who felt like he might be the better target, just being a little bit lower in the HP department. But they nearly had the DPS in order to bring Griff down. Very close there for the average Joes. Love the attempt by the Hoofs on the back end. But as well as Met Yankees playing, I think El Leon is having a much better impact as well in this game, just putting constant pressure on this front line and to the back line of the Hoofs. They're in a position now where they have to respect these Sobek plucks because he's too difficult to kill. That's what makes Sobek so good in my mind, is that as soon as he gets tank boots, he's kind of off the menu. He just gets too tanky too quickly, and that's where Leon is now.
Tough to deal with him, but I'm on board, man, with turning Chernobog ult into a BDS, a Baskin delivery system. And that's what we saw happen in that last battle. Any other changes for that could get scary. What if he can even hop alongside the Tsukiyomi ult, end up in the backline? Great possibilities for him. As Leon rotates over, Snoopy still does not have the beads, but cannot lock him down. And the Herculean Hoofs are the one bringing the squad with them, as they've got 4 members on this left side. I don't know if Leon quite recognizes it. Baroneri wasn't in lane to maybe give the word that they're Mia. But now they should know. Instead, they'll settle for these oracles, get a little bit of vision around the Fury. And do you want Average Joe's to kind of make a play on this Fury? I know it's early, and they don't quite have the lead they did a moment ago, but I feel like they got to try and put their foot down again and try and start up a fight.
I think so, and that's exactly what Ishtal's going to do over here.
Okay.
For Snoopy down for about 20 seconds, and he didn't get to play for what felt like 20 seconds, I'm sure, just constantly CC'd by this Erlong and this Sobek. And you've got really good objective DPS between the Apollo, who gets that passive stacked up, doubles his attack speed, ends up being able to do objectives earlier than most other ADCs. Scylla, of course, there with the Secure, especially with that Rod of Tahuti already done. And then you've got this Erlong Shen, who also is one of the better objective DPSers out of the jungle. I think you can go for gold a little bit earlier on and just trust Baroneri to be the one there to secure. It's a matter of how much you have to commit in order to do so. You don't want to put yourself in a position where Ishtal is absolutely dead every time because he just gets Kepri rooted and Nox comboed, and maybe that ends up losing you the Fury. I mean, you got to be a little bit careful, but if you can get vision control, I think they certainly have the comp to do it.
I agree, as he takes quite a bit of damage from Meerkat over in solo. Neglected to pick up the early starter. And I think that's not so uncommon on Cthulhu's. Like, I feel like sometimes you might see them take a Vamp Shroud or something like that over into solo. Some other mage starter right would help him out a little bit with that clear, but this not so wild for him, as he might even be electing to pick up a full one later on in this build to kind of give him a mid-game power spike. But the clock, I think, is ticking for Herculean Hoofs to a certain extent. You talked about how you have to limit Ishtal in this early, and they have. Once he gets those Purification Beads online, which I gotta think is his second relic, he'll have free license to be a lot more aggressive. Nox isn't quite as scary, Kepri not as scary, when he can get out of that first initial CC.
Yeah, I agree. And like I said, I mean, I think you got to kill him multiple times in the early stages of the game if you want to make him pay for not having Purification Beads. They haven't exactly done that. I mean, only the one death for him. So I think that they need to be doing a little bit more, but I think the window's basically already closed. And now it's blink, pre-beads, full combo, insta-kill, whoever he goes on during that time.
Leon has had Snoopy's beads up against the wall, hasn't he? Those have been his every time he wants to come in for a pluck, and Snoopy hasn't had much choice but to respect the pluck, as you said earlier, and how much damage is going to be on the other side of them, that you cannot turn and burn a Sobek. No hope of that. Look at this grouping, though. I think we might be seeing a little bit of a Gold Fury skirmish happening soon. A ward on it, though, from the Hoofs. They'll know everything going on this Fury. No secrets here. As in comes Meerkat. He gets here a little bit ahead of his solo opponent. So that means they'll have a bit of an advantage at the start, and Leon and Baroneri have walked right into it. The beads come out from the Scylla early on, and Leon in trouble. Has to use Charge Prey in order to retreat. The Piercing Moonlight being used. He's bringing Baskin along for the ride, but they cannot lock down Leon even still. And in comes Griff right into the thick of it. I'm a Monster connects, and Baskin is low already. Uzi should be able to clean this up, but it's Baroneri that gets the job done.
And Uzi, no signs of stopping. Met Yankee, nowhere to go. Tossed back at a double kill for Baroneri. Even though Meerkat was there a little bit earlier, they just don't have an answer to this Cthulhu now that he's gotten a little bit tankier. And that was my concern with this composition from minute one. Who kills this Cthulhu ever? come team fight time? I still don't have an answer.
Hey, Meerkat, I hope you're ready to get jumped, because that's what happened. Grift and the boys found him off some great setup from the front line, and suddenly the Joes have found their footing. They've got the Fury down low, and I don't think there's going to be a contest from the Hoofs. That has extended the lead up to 3,700 in gold, 3,000 in experience. And I thought that the Hoofs had a good chance. They had that initial sort of pincer onto Leon and Baroneri, and they do get Baroneri's beads, but Leon making it out of there was a huge turnaround for him and gave him an opportunity for Uzi to kind of come in and look for some cleanup.
That's what makes Sobek so good, man. I mean, he's got one of the best initiations in the whole game, and then he's just, you compare him to a character like Athena, who's going to dash taunt, and then is kind of left there a lot of the time. That's why we talk a little bit more frequently about the follow-up that she needs. Sobek, pluck, and then he just lives. He heals, he knocks you away. He's got his ultimate where he gets percent protections, by the way. Like he gets a lot of tools in order to get out of those situations. So I mean, the Nox combo just half healthed them. Meerkat's ultimate does a good amount of damage, but nowhere near enough.
Oh, Baroneri in trouble without the beads, but somehow managed to wriggle his way out of there. He even gets hit by the Noxel, but I don't think that's going to be enough. In comes Snoopy, but the Aegis keeps him alive. Beads used to make sure Snoopy makes it out of there alive. A heavy investment. Just going to wait on the Kepri res to save him instead. Smart play, but that doesn't make you alone. And now Snoopy in danger of falling anyway. Griff rotates in and finds the kill. Uses the Mez on Damas to pull him back into danger. Does still have that ultimate available that gets him up and over the wall, but a great response from the Joes, who turned that into a 2-for-1. Ishtao almost finds the route to catch up to Mast as well.
Really close. Good slow and then speed up by Mast with the 1-2 combo is what keeps him alive in that instance, but just way too deep for Snoopy. I mean, I guess it's the fact that they lose Met Yankee as well. Snoopy for Baroneri is very worth it for Snoopy because he's got the shutdown kill. He has no bounty. But once you start talking about losing 2-for-1, it gets, now it's just more gold efficient for the average Joes because they got a lot of assists. Then they come over and kill Meerkat. This has not been Snoopy's game, to say the least. 1-4 and still not even stacked with the Devo gloves quite yet.
Oh, that's tough at this point in the game to still not have that at his disposal. It's been a struggle for him since the very beginning when they got that dual lane off to a really good start. Kind of put him in a corner. We talked about what Uzi might be doing later on in his build for going the early starter item. It's a warding sigil for him late on in the build. I probably wouldn't have guessed this for him, but a big item I got to think for Cthulhu, with the protections and decreasing some of that damage taken.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, you just end up becoming this tanky monster that's pretty much impossible to deal with. And then, of course, everyone talks about... I haven't seen a whole lot of Sigil of the Old Guard. I'm looking at Infused Sigil as the one that I'd expect him to upgrade into. Of course, that's the one where you get stacks by taking damage, and then after a couple stacks, you explode and deal magic damage to everyone around you. Sounds kind of like Cthulhu 3 whenever you're in your ult form anyways. You're going to be doing that. You're going to be in the teeth of the team fight. Interesting that he just decides to forego it early on entirely and then picks it up fourth. Like, it's kind of an arbitrary place. Maybe he just had 700 gold and knew he was going to be going into it eventually, but decided that it wasn't worth a tier 1 of whatever other item he's going. He's probably going to finish another full item before he gets to the point where he can upgrade this at level 20.
Yeah, interesting that, like you said, he eventually settles for that tier 1 when he passed earlier on. But he's in a great spot this game in terms of his relevancy. So adding a little bit of extra prots on there, some dampening, which is what that applies for him to reduce the damage taken afterwards, is going to be huge. But Uzi's already been pulled in, stuck inside the silence. But it looks like he barely took any damage. Now it's his turn to get aggressive. He turns around to fight up against Snoopy, who comes dashing into the fight. 9 turns blessing from Ishtao. Does pull into his mask. Looks for him in the back. Meerkat comes in with the dive as well. But Griff has the disruption, and I'm a monster. Buries Meerkat in the response. Uzi somehow still taking up damage, still alive as Snoopy falls to Griff, who's had an excellent set so far, 5-0-6, and a great ultimate from him in that one.
And I just love the way that the Joes are committing around Uzi's ultimate, around Leon's plucks. They've just been in the right spots every single time, and that's the perfect way to play it if you're Uzi. Get purification beads, And as long as you don't die in the initial Nox combo, you can't. It's not possible. He got Nox ulted and was immune to the tick damage because of his ultimate and that extra damage reduction from the warding signal. Like, that is nuts. He is unkillable right now, at least until Snoopy gets to basically full build.
They've got the Fire Giant low. Ishtown taking quite a bit of damage inside it too, but the average Joe is secured, and that was close because the Nox ultimate was on its way, but Baskin could not get there in time. What a bounce back from the Joes here in this one, and kind of doing it with a pretty fundamentally different draft from what we've seen here. Leon has played the Yamoja, the Kabrakan, and the Sobek all in one set, and each, I'd say, with significantly different play styles and levels of commitment to what they can do, and Ishtao has responded well too. This has been a really impressive performance from the Joes up against a Herculean Hoofs team who we came into this SCC season thinking would be the top team, and instead are in danger now of falling down to an 0-3 start. Not at all what was expected.
That would be alone at the bottom of the league with no wins. Yeah, the opposite, I think, of what most expected for this squad. But it goes to show how much better the SCC has gotten. Even over the course of the last year, that these teams are practicing harder and improving at a more rapid pace. And the Hoofs have now got to play a little bit of catch-up, potentially, to the rest of the league. It's wild to think about a team with this much talent being at the bottom, but if the Joes can close out, and they're looking pretty good to do so, that's what's going to be the case.
Meerkat struggling in this one, 0-4 for him over in that solo lane. And I thought he had the perfect piercing Moonlight in that last fight to kind of follow up on the setup that was coming from Mast, who jumped in with the Lord of the Afterlife, but it just was not enough damage. I think that speaks to kind of the deficit they're at here at this point, right? And how even in good situations and good application of their abilities, they can't quite get over the threshold. They've got Griff over in left pushing up, and then the rest of the squad here in mid. But Griff has given up on the left lane. Looks like he's coming to join the squad in mid instead. And the Hoofs are putting up a defense here. 3 members showing presence as Leon goes in for the pluck, cannot find it, is now stuck in the back line. Snoopy even comes in with his ultimate to assist, but there's just nothing doing. The mid tier 2 goes down, and average Joes can continue their onslaught of the map.
Now that damage on a Leon does matter. He'll, of course, be able to heal up with the sickening strike, but that's not a ton of healing. I mean, it's going to take him 2 or 3 uses of that ability to get to full health. Make that just 1, actually, because of Fire Giant Sustain adding in. No blink on him does matter. No ultimate on him does matter, but Snoopy losing that ult feels a little bit more impactful to me. I mean, just letting him split the map and get some much-needed farm with him.
Uzzy moves in with the descent into madness. Ishtao lurks off to the side, and Baron Eric has already sent Met Yankee to the afterlife. Meerkat trying to use the ultimate just for the CC immunity in order to disengage. But average Joes have a different idea. Snoopy is forced to fall. Meerkat is the next target, and Griff the one on the chase and claiming that last kill. Only 2 members up of Herculean Hoofs now to defend. They can't do the left side. Phoenix tier 2 still up. They recognize it and come on over to mid instead. Where? Okay, they are going to commit to trying to get the Phoenix. They wanted to go back and get the minion wave first, and now they're ready.
I wonder if they can go for an end here. I mean, Baskin, no ultimate. Think that you might have a shot. This is definitely the safer option. It should be 2 guaranteed Phoenixes with a wave coming here on the left-hand side, but might have been kind of close. They might have been able to just end the game right there.
There is the pluck onto Mast. He has the Scarab's Blessing on him, so Met Yankee keeps his jungler alive for now. But it looks like they are done with this fight in the left. The left side Phoenix removed. Uzzy has already channeled the back while the rest of the squad is still here. A little bit surprised by how disjointed they ended up there as Griff is trying to stay aggressive. He got Mast very near the critical threshold for the kill. So in comes Leon. They recognize Met Yankee and Snoopy is low. Uzzy comes back in with the teleport. And so he's able to get back in with a whole new health bar, but not quite able to fully punish the Herculean Hoofs. But haven't they done enough already? The mid and left side Phoenix are down. I want to reset if I'm the Joes.
Yeah, you got gold to spend, baby. I mean, starters to upgrade. Both Baron Airy and Griff should be able to upgrade theirs. Very close for Uzzy. He's probably going to stick around and just try and ding over to level 20, but maybe just trying to stay on sync, on the clock with the rest of the team and get out with them. But, man, I mean, the Hoofs just have no real answer again to this walk up and Cthulhu ult option from Uzzy. now at least you've got chin size done for Snoopy, but the kid's level 17. That's not going to get the job done. He needs to be able to get more itemization and get those base stats up a little bit higher if he wants to really be able to handle this Cthulhu.
Well, in comes Griff, and Baskin never had a shot. Was that 1,300 from Baroneri that put Baskin 6 feet under? But it looks like they're not going to continue to force the issue up mid. They're going to come over to right, push this minion wave up, and go ahead and clean up the last remaining tower for the Herculean Hoofs in their side of the map, or come on down to the fire. And that will be the call in the end. Grab the biggest objective on the map, knowing that Baskin not even alive to have a chance for a steal. This is dotting your I's and crossing your T's, isn't it? They want to make sure there's no chance they lose this one.
Exactly. I mean, this is as safe as you can get, but I've got total respect for it. You've got to just, why take the risk? You know, we're 99.9% to win this game from this position. Let's just get the Fire Giant, get the tower, come in with the wave. I mean, you won't have Griff's ult, and Baroneri's ult is still a ways off as well. The only CDR he has, he's got 30% right now, so shouldn't be that much longer until that Item Monster's ready to go. Why force it? Let's just wait around.
Leon's been plucked and silenced, but the crush lands on top of him, and that lowers the Herculean Hoofs down into the optimal kill threshold for the Joes. Right side Phoenix, a distant memory, and the biggest sickle you'll ever see inside Uzi. In comes the Lord of the Afterlife from Mass into the back line, but now Mass being brought in the hard way, hit by a pluck. Scarab's blessing is on him, yes. So that means he can keep up the chase. I'm a Monster connects on the Meerkat, even though they lost Griff in the back. Leon gets masked, and this aggression shall continue, as they know exactly where Snoopy is lurking inside the wall. How about lurking in the grave as this Chow finds the last kill, and now Metyeki and Baskin have a nigh impossible task to do.
Just feel like this one was a draft diff here, Finch. I mean, you could say Griff
Almost
diff if you want, because he had a really good game, but yeah, I feel like you're right. It was just which team had the better draft, because both teams were able to execute their good drafts really well.
Yes.
I just didn't like this Hoofs draft at all here for game number 3. And I like the average Joe's one quite a bit. So no real surprise that Uzi's the real MVP, despite the scoreline not looking super insane. I mean, 1-1-12, but he made it impossible for anybody to really do anything in this one.
Yeah, that was tough for him. And you said right from the beginning, what are they going to do about this Cthulhu once he gets some items online and starts getting in our face? And the answer was nothing. They basically just folded underneath him every time he stepped up, and they had the follow-up for it, too. You already said how well Griff played. Baroneri's damage numbers were absolutely nuts in that one, too. And with that kind of follow-up for a frontliner that's unkillable, it's pretty much a difficult task for the Hoofs on the other side. Aggro, any diagnosis for this team? I mean, they're now 0-3. It's a tough start for them.
Like I said, I think that they've thought that they can come in and just out-mechanic people, just like they have been able to for a lot of their careers. But the SCC is a lot better these days, and I think other teams are putting in work that's really been paying off. I can't speak for sure to what the Hoofs are doing behind the scenes, but I imagine it's probably not been a lot of practice so far. At least I hope so, based on what I'm seeing. That would be my diagnosis. If that's practiced, then they're in serious trouble. But if they buckle down and come back, look, Baskin, Mask, Snoopy, Gino, Meerkat are not going to go winless this phase. I feel very confident in that. I'm sure they'll be able to bounce back.
Too strong a team, I think, for this 0-3 to keep up. We're going to go to a quick break, though. Be right back with the breakdown on the other side.
The Average Joes make good on their fantastic game number 1 and have taken this set in game number 3. Gore, I mean, this is easy for me, right? I just get to bring up the topics, you get to talk about them. This one's hard to break down, man. I wish you all the best. I mean, this is top to bottom, just a great game from Average Joes, a good draft, and then just a bad game from the Herculean Hoofs.
Yeah, it was one of those things. We talked a lot about how do you deal with this team, how do you deal with the gods that we see being powerful in games 1 and 2, and we said, well, if you're second pick, you got to ban Athena. They do that part, and then they draft things like Nox, and the other team gets, Cthulhu, Scylla, Erlong, Apollo. Like, it's so stacked on the side of Average Joes in terms of the draft. It just feels like the Herculean Hoofs, I don't know what the game plan was coming into this one, but nothing seemed to click throughout all of this, whereas Average Joes were firing on all cylinders. I mean, they were prepared for everything. It seemed like the setup was there, the follow-through was there. We had talked about it at the very beginning, or I guess the end of that last desk, but
look at this.
I mean, look at Baronary, look at Griff. Like, no one is able to get back there and touch them. Their health bars are virtually full, or in this case, for Baronary, is absolutely full. Like, they were never pressured out to the point where they felt unsafe, and that gave them almost not just the feeling of invincibility, but it seems like actual invincibility. They barely died this game. I mean, it was, 5 total kills on the side of the Herculean Hoofs? Just whatever that draft was meant to do for the Chaos side, it did not come to fruition, and it did not enable what they wanted it to. And instead, you get things like a 6-1-11 Apollo, an 8-1-5 Scylla, like just stellar gameplay from Average Joes there.
1 death from top to bottom there for Average Joes. Everyone shares in the blame of feeding. We can't jokingly accuse one guy
Everybody gets one
of feeding the enemy team. Everyone gets 1 single death here in this one. Definitely feels like just a bit of a draft difference here, Gordon. Now we've seen Tsukuyomi solo a couple of times. Is this something that you imagine we see a continued trend of, or is his place in the jungle?
I imagine he's going to sneak over there a few times. I think last year we got to see it, like Set would make his way over to the solo lane occasionally. I think there are players that are going to pick this up, and they're going to make it look good over there, and there's also players that are going to make it look bad over there, right? And it doesn't matter what game you're looking at, it's just going to be a coin flip based on it. I won't be surprised if at some point we see FineOK playing a Tsukuyomi solo, and I won't be surprised if there's times where we see it, not necessarily when FineOK is playing it, but like in the SCC, maybe it's feeding, maybe it's carrying, right? It's going to be all over the place, but I don't think it's going to take the place of Warriors. I think it's going to be a specific counter pick for a lot of these guys.
Well, let's see how the standings in North America shake down after the one and only NA game we broadcasted here today. We'll have some more NA games for you as the weekend goes on. This is a 5 versus 6 matchup, and now there's no longer a tie. It is a literal 5 versus 6 matchup. Average Joes find their first win. Herculean Hoofs, against all odds, still winless here in the North American Smite Challenger circuit. Maybe Aggro's right here. He's got to buckle down, put that nose to the grindstone, get things going. The Week 3 schedule now joins us. The final game of EU, that'll broadcast on Saturday, Clay Soldiers versus Just F6. And then 1 NA game on Friday and 1 NA game on Sunday. And Gormizer, we have one game of SCC on each of those days.
Yeah, I wonder why,
because
Dave.
something's coming back. I think the SPL, after a long wait, is finally back.
Man, I literally, it has been the longest time. I don't have words for it. I have literally felt a miss for months. Like, it is just, getting back into casting, like, the last couple of weeks into, like, SCC. We did, like, some community stuff, like, here and there, but, like, SPL just hits different, man. I'm so pumped.
It sure does. I mean, there's been so much build-up around this. Rosters have swapped. Everything's gone crazy. Yeah. SPL returns tomorrow, 1 p.m. Eastern time, so make sure to tune into that. We're shifting everything back a couple of hours, if you remember that last year. So make sure to tune in tomorrow. We'll have SCC 11 a.m. Eastern time, and then we will have the esports weekly kind of run-in show to the SPL waiting room. The SPL waiting room. That's right. We've rebranded it. Gore, you're the host. You're the one who really needs to know the name. That's a cop-out on my part. The SPL waiting room after SCC, and then after that, 1 p.m. Eastern time, the Smite Pro League returns here tomorrow. But that's not all the fun esports Smite stuff we've got going on today. Up next, the SPL Rundown, hosted by APAM and a bunch of other names on that show that you guys certainly will know. They'll discuss Season 8. They'll discuss Week 1. And they're going to talk to Paul, hey, one of the most important members of that PK World Championship winning team. So make sure to stay tuned after this, after we end the broadcast here. The SPL Rundown will be on stream immediately after that, so stick around. Plenty of fun still to go. Gormizer, I don't know. It's hard to say, man. I want to put you on the spot here. I want to ask if there's anything that you're looking forward to in particular in the SPL this week, but if you ask me, it's just I'm happy that SPL is back. I don't know if I got one specific game, one specific thing I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, I think every single game this week is going to be an eye-opener. It's going to be really fun. I think immediately I'm excited for the SPL Rundown. Like, I loved watching that last year, so I'm excited to be able to see what, like, their opinions are. It's always nice, like, just getting the feelers out there and talking to SPL with people. It's fun. But then, like you said, tomorrow, like, the biggest thing on the horizon, just having it crest over the hill and jumping into it.
Been a long time coming, Gore. One more day until the SPL is back. Remember, SPL Rundown about to kick off, but on behalf of myself, Gormizer, all the other casters, everyone back in production, thanks for watching. We'll see you for the SPL tomorrow.